A young man woke in an unfamiliar place, lying on the grass and taking in his surroundings, and for a while he hesitated to get up because he had no idea how he had ended up in the forest. Strange plants covered the area, unlike anything the young man had seen. Standing up, the young man grabbed his head to ease the pain a little. Standing up, the young man realized he had entered a world very different from his own and began to look around, but he avoided thinking about how he arrived because the memory of his death was painful. Not sure what to do or where to go, he paused to decide his next move and was interrupted when a bear appeared behind him. The animal began making loud noises to scare its prey, and the young man was frightened and confused, so he just stood there trembling. He did not know what to do because he had not expected trouble so soon after waking up. The young man started thinking how to save himself, considering pretending to be dead, running away, or fighting, with fighting the craziest choice. As the bear moved closer, the young man grew more panicked. With nothing better to do, he simply greeted the monster. The animal did not stop attacking, as the young man had expected, and instead grew more aggressive. The man had clearly chosen the wrong way to fight. When the bear prepared to attack, thick slime wrapped around it and froze its movements, catching the young man completely off guard. Slime wrapped the creature like it was underwater. The bear couldn't get free but struggled. The young man didn't know what to do because the bear wasn't dangerous anymore, and he wasn't sure how long that would last. Soon the bear began to dissolve in the slime like acid. The monster slowly stopped showing any signs of life. The young man realized he couldn't handle it and threw up when he approached the tree. The young man realized that with the bear gone, the slime could still attack him, and after a moment he felt they were trying to strike. Unexpectedly, the shelter he'd been hiding behind was destroyed, and when he turned he saw the slime very close to him. The substance did not attack the young man. It stopped where the bear had been. He forced himself to calm down and think about his next move. The slime had swallowed the animal, so he had to be very careful. The young man stopped acting recklessly. When a bear appeared in front of him, he realized he needed to understand this world. The encounter with the slug was not the worst thing that happened to him. To protect himself a little, the man found a branch that looked like a wooden sword and used it to smash spider nests. Wandering through the forest, the young man saw people and assumed they were civilians, but they were actually savages carrying human flesh. Frightened, the man crawled behind the bushes to avoid being seen because the robbers might attack him. At last the young man found a real road and cried with joy, carving a lasting inscription on a tree to mark the start of his journey. He was not pleased by what had happened because everything felt too unfamiliar and strange. After wandering the forest for a long time, he came to a castle that looked ordinary compared with those he'd seen in fantasy stories. Approaching the castle gate, the young man called a greeting to the guards at the territory's entrance, but the men in armor spoke a different language and did not understand him, so they grabbed and arrested him. His eagerness to meet people landed him in jail because the guards did not know what else to do with a stranger. He hadn't wanted this to happen, so he shouted to the men that he only wanted protection from monsters, but when the guards answered, he didn't understand a single word. Resigned to his situation, the man lay down on the hay near the grate, thought about what had happened to him, and fell asleep. He feared what would happen next, because in such a short time he had already been attacked by a bear that a slug ate, had met bandits, and had been put in prison. Awakened by a blow, the young man opened his eyes and saw a girl in armor standing before him, blonde and talking with the guards. Then she turned and pointed at him. Seeing the armored girl smile, the man assumed she would understand and smile back, so he waved, but she clearly did not appreciate the stranger's behavior and hit him again, leaving him doubled over and unable to get up. The girl was very strong, so when the young man passed out again, she put him in a bag and dragged him away, and when he woke up he realized he was being carried toward a building. After a while, the man felt the bag being untied and began to work his way out, and when he stuck his head out he saw two women in front of him, one the armored girl who had brought him to an unknown place. The blonde girl turned to another woman named Maya and said the young man had already woken up and freed himself completely from the bag. Hearing the conversation, the young man wanted to insult the girl who had treated him that way, but he stopped when he realized he was starting to understand a foreign language. The short-haired girl told the man to stay calm because he was in the church, and the woman said a spell had been cast on the young man that let him understand and speak a foreign language. Realizing the spell reminded him of a chewing gum translator, the young man changed the subject when the girl in the dress asked what he was talking about. Rising to his feet, he complained that the girl in the knight's armor had been too harsh with him, and the short-haired girl looked reproachfully at her friend Ilias. The young man said he still had many questions and moments he did not understand, and he did not expect the girls to believe his story. The girl at the church told the stranger she could spot lies, so if he was honest, she'd believe him. Pleased to have met her, the young man even asked the girl if he could hug her. The lady was flattered, and the armored girl nearby asked him to start the story sooner. Thinking life would be easier if he could spot lies, the young man told me he came from another world, and he also told the girls his name, which made them both blush a little. When the young man finished his story, the church girl confirmed he was telling the truth, and the armored girl said it was hard to believe. Later, the young man said a bear attacked him, and a slug tried to eat him, so he feared he would soon die. The girl in the dress cut him off and grabbed his shoulders. The woman asked if the young man had really escaped Black Demon Killer Mountain. He did not know the place had such a strange name, and she said it was too dangerous even for dragons, let alone humans. After learning about the dragons, the young man decided he wanted to see them himself later. The girl said the bear the man saw had eaten a fruit that makes you unknowingly go to the slug's lair. When the armored girl said the young man had brought the fruits, he said he had to eat several because he was hungry. The girl in the dress said the man had very little mana, so the fruit control hardly affected him. Later, he thought about his mana since he wasn't overwhelmed by its power, and he assumed someone as ordinary as him should have exceptional abilities, as often happens in these stories. The girl in the dress insisted it was impossible for the young man to have any power because his mana was far too low, and he wondered why he had nothing after being reborn in another world. The young man realized that in the new world, he was no more dangerous than a beetle that could be stepped on and crushed, and aside from his stick, he had nothing to protect himself. Instead of being upset, he felt relieved because his lack of abilities would keep him safe. Ilias told the young man she was surprised. He had reached the city with no equipment, and he said he had used a stick. The armored girl smiled and said she didn't know it was his weapon, so she used it for firewood. He was upset because he had nothing else left. Ilias warned the man to be glad he was alive, since bandits often show up on the mountain and spare no one. The young man said he had actually seen the very one described that night. Ilias paused and asked whether she had understood the man correctly. The young man said that while looking for shelter for himself, he had seen a few grim-looking people who seemed like bandits. The girl with blonde hair grabbed the man by the collar and shook him, demanding to know exactly where he had seen the criminals, and he asked her to stop because he could hardly speak, but Ilias would not calm down. To rouse the girl, the lady from the church shouted at her, and then the knight dropped the guy and hurried to apologize to him. Upset and angry because Ilias had used her power that could kill him, the young man worried, and the girl in the dress doubted he could find the exact spot where he had seen the bandits. The man replied that he could, since he remembered carving an inscription on a nearby tree, and the woman from the church wanted to hug him, so he asked her to be gentler. Ilias didn't want to just stand and watch the couple because she had to assemble a squad immediately to go to the mountains, and the girl in armor said the young man would go with her to show the right place, which made him unhappy. The blonde turned and introduced herself properly, saying her name was Ilias Ratzel, a knight of the kingdom of Thy sent to capture the bandits on the mountain, and as the young man had correctly reported, the bandits were near the cave entrance and inside the cave. Two men stood at the entrance to their lair, but one began to leave, so the dark-haired man asked where his partner had gone, and the friend said he needed to relieve himself. Left alone, the bandit wished he didn't have to sit and guard the cave, and would rather have a beautiful woman with a shapely figure in front of him. A man was snacking and kept saying he was tired of seeing women selling goods at the market next to him, but his monologue was interrupted. Seconds later, a spear struck the bandit's head, killing him instantly and leaving him dead on the ground. Ilias leapt from hiding and landed a precise blow to the criminal's head. Another knight grabbed the second man, but warned him that the bandit had used detection magic, which would alert the criminals that they had been discovered. Surprised that the bandits had magic, the young man froze, but Ilias told everyone not to panic. With only one exit from the cave, they could defeat all the bandits quickly. Nervous, the dark-haired man tried to trust the knight because the blonde woman spoke with certainty and seemed very strong. Ilias wasn't the only one who impressed him. The knight team was also surprisingly fast and brave, and he realized every knight was marked by courage and strength. The blonde girl turned to him and said they had to go too, so he could not fall behind the group. The young man was scared and did not resist. Entering the cave, the man and woman saw knights and bandits locked in a fierce battle, each side fighting to leave no chance for the other to win. The fighting was brutal, so the man kept his distance to avoid being hit by anyone's weapon. Ilya commanded her squad and ordered them not to kill those who surrendered, but to seize anyone who tried to escape. The fierce fight went on for a while, until the gang's leader, whom Ilias had spotted, emerged from deep in the cave and moved to strike the girl with a large homemade stone club. The armored girl saw it at once and blocked the blow with her right hand, then asked her opponent what he expected. Ilias smiled and regarded her opponent as if he posed no danger. The girl asked why the gang leader had such a large body if it did not help him. The man grew angry, insulted the girl, and tried to pull the club from her hand, but the knight broke the stone she was holding. Ilya said she refused to carry such a large body to the kingdom, so she went straight to the cave to confront the gang leader for all his crimes. The armored girl took down her opponents with a single blow, drawing the eyes of her team and the dark-haired young man. Next, the knight used detection magic to locate all the bandits who fled and bring back any survivors. The knights celebrated the victory and began following Ilias's orders to speed up the mission. The young man sighed with relief. Then a girl came up and said everything went smoothly, and he admitted he had been very scared to be in the cave and watch the fight. Ilias couldn't understand why the man was afraid, since he had seen the great knights succeed and should have been delighted. Still curious, the young man rushed to ask the girl why Ilias didn't use her sword without a scabbard. She quickly insisted she simply didn't want to stain the blade with dirty blood, and he said he'd seen her try to grab a weapon, but fail because the sword was stuck. The knight paused, unsure how to respond to the young man's attention. The girl grew nervous and angry, so the young man quickly cut the conversation short to avoid putting himself at risk from her anger. Once the knights carried out Ilias's orders, the mission to destroy the bandits was complete. The team captured 7 of the 30, the rest died in the battle, and not a single criminal escaped. Returning to the kingdom, the young man realized he had grown used to Ilias carrying him on her shoulder. The young man's other worry was why he had been brought to a new world, only to end up an ordinary person with no inheritance. He also thought he might have been the victim of a divine whim, but the reason mattered less than his desire to see the face of the one who had called him to a new world, because leaving him alone on the mountain was stupid. He had no interest in overthrowing anyone or building a harem, and only wanted a quiet, worry-free life. At the same time, deep in the forest of the kingdom of Theas, a man listened as his subordinate reported that the knights had destroyed the Gaido squad. Decola, the leader of the alliance of mountain bandits, chuckled and said he didn't want to worry about it because the bandits obviously weren't stupid, and he knew people feared his anger more than the torture of ordinary knights. After the mission, Ilias arrived at the palace of the Theas kingdom and entered the conference room. King Tais, Marito Tais, thanked him for the good work and said the knights had done a great job this time. She bowed and said she would keep trying to carry out the king's orders. He asked whether she had managed to get any information. Ilias said the detained bandits were being questioned now, but they had not said anything important yet, so more time was needed. After the girl spoke, the king noticed Lord Leonard raising his hand to add something. The man replied that he knew Lady Ratzel had managed to capture the villains, but she could not carry out the torture, so the lord wanted to interrogate the prisoners himself. Whispers filled the room, so the lord hurried to apologize. He again pointed out that Ilias' small elite squad was much smaller than Lord Leonardo's. The men urged the king to consider that the prisoners were not ordinary people. Those prisoners were bandits who would not let people live in peace. The lord looked at the girl and told her he was ready to help. Outside, people still distrusted Ilias's powers, while elsewhere the table was set for lunch. The dark-haired young man, having not eaten in a long time, decided to try what was prepared for him. Though it was his first time tasting food from another world, he found it quite good, and despite noting the spices, did not complain when the old man apologized for having nothing more to offer. After the knights returned from their mission last night, Ilias invited him to stay and celebrate with the team, but the young man refused. Needing sleep after 2 days without rest, the young man asked for somewhere to sleep. An adult who heard him gave him a change of clothes, showed him where to spend the night, then hurried away. Back in the present, the young man felt lucky to have met such a kind grandfather, so he asked his name, and the man said it was Karagu Gesta Domi Trukavkin. The young man didn't understand the old man's words, so he asked his name again. Even after the grandfather repeated it, the young man still didn't get it. Seeing the young man's confused face, the old man said the young man could just call him Grandfakarga. After the man finished eating, he asked the young man if he had time to go with him, and when the young man agreed, the man took him to Ilias. The girl apologized for the trouble and asked the young man for advice. The knight explained she could not get the information she needed from the prisoners in any way, and the young man then clarified whether she was still interrogating them. Ilias said the interrogations were still underway, but the bandits refused to reveal how they communicated. The man grinned and said he hadn't imagined such a strong girl would have trouble interrogating criminals. Ilias sighed and said it wasn't as simple as it first seemed. Even bait didn't work on the bandits, she said, because they used magic to avoid meeting warriors. The criminals had detection magic, that let them sense any creature with mana within a certain radius. The young man asked why the knights did not use the same magic, and Ilias said the bandits carried anti-magic stones. The girl set a spherical stone on the table and showed the young man how it worked. Ilias said the stone literally suppresses magic. Its effectiveness and price depend on size, so even a child could buy a small ball. The man was surprised at how accessible such an important item was. The man said that because of those items, magicians are clearly not valued in this world. Ilias explained that although warriors can use magic, whenever a battle begins there is always a nearby stone that suppresses magical forces. He realized one spell was impossible to perform in this world, and he was surprised that this new world was as cruel as his old one. The young man suggested hypnosis might help during an interrogation, but the girl said the bandits had made sure it would not work on them. Small anti-magic stones had been implanted in the bandits' brains, so the girl could not remove them without killing the prisoners. After a moment's thought, the young man turned to her and spoke. The dark-haired man offered to help and said he would try to interrogate the criminals himself. When a young man sat down in front of him, the bandit grew angry and demanded to know who he was. The guy tried not to react to the rudeness because he said he did not want to use brute force during the interrogation, but the man refused to speak to the young man and said he would rather die than say anything. He assessed the situation and examined the other man's body, noting wounds that may have come from earlier torture. The young man relaxed and said the man faced a death sentence, but the bandit was not surprised because he was ready to die at any moment, and the young man could not understand why the man remained silent despite facing imminent death. The young man said the other bandits would forget the man as soon as he died, so the criminal needed to say anything important before he died, and he wondered why the bandit sitting in front of him showed no fear of death. The man started taunting his interlocutor, saying he could stay silent. The man answered and asked what would change if he said anything. The young man stuck to his plan and said he would be glad to hear anything. The man also quickly adds that if he is satisfied, the victim will stop being tortured, so he can calmly say goodbye to his life without violence. Noticing the criminal's reaction, the young man said that if the bandit stayed silent, he would leave and the knights would return to the room, since he had acted to draw the man out and see what he would do next. The man refused to give up and simply repeated what he'd said earlier. The criminal believed nothing would change if he died. Then the bandit grabbed his head and said someone had filled him and his comrades with lasting fear, so dying under torture seemed easier than saying anything. At last, the young man understood why the criminal would not speak, because someone terrified him more than death. Having learned something from the bandit, the young man went to find Maya at the church to ask if she knows about magic that can change a dead person's soul. The girl in the dress grabbed the guy and hugged him, thinking Ilias had threatened the young man, but the knight made it clear she had not done anything to him, and the guy pulled back a little and explained that the girl really wasn't to blame. The girl in the dress said such magic really exists and can bring back a dead person's soul. Maya added it had long been forgotten, and the young man said everyone would want that power. Maya fixed him with a serious look and told him not to say that in front of anyone, since in some countries he could be executed for saying he wanted to get her. Surprised, the man asked how dangerous she was, and the girl said that sort of magic only causes harm. Some people used her to try to bring others back to life, but it never ended well. Maya told the young man that everyone who tried to bring people back to life eventually became demonic lords, and he stood stunned, unable to answer. At first he doubted anyone like that existed. Later it became clear that if resurrection turned people into demonic lords, that explained why the magic was forbidden. Maya also revealed that besides this forbidden magic, there is something called the dead spirit spell. He decided to help the girl with the books and asked what the spell did. Maya replied that it could force a dead person's soul out and humiliate him among the living. For example, it could be used to control the dead or to use them as sacrifices. In any case, such magic was cruel because nothing was worse. After a brief pause, the man asked the girl from the church whether those called to be resurrected remained conscious. The short-haired girl looked surprised and told him he was asking about very difficult matters. He quickly assured them he was asking in such detail only to learn more about what was so terrible. Maya told the young man that she had once fought a man who used the same spell, and she and her comrades had to kill the monsters the enemy created. Most monsters just let out a death scream before disappearing. One of them behaved differently. When Maya finished with another creature, it turned to her and thanked her for destroying it. The dark-haired young man listened closely to the girl from the church, then bowed and thanked her for the story. After the man left, Maya asked Ilias to keep an eye on him because he was too interested in frightening things, but she knew he was not a bad person and might one day make a mistake. By then the young man had reached the prisoners, smiled, and said he would be the one to question them. The criminals refused to listen to the man and demanded the matter be handled immediately. Tired of hearing talk about death, the young man asked directly whether men were really so afraid of becoming victims of a dead spirit spell. At first the bandits were wary, but later they pretended not to understand him, so he kept talking. The young man grew more serious and said that after he understood the criminals' situation, he decided to offer them something new. The bandits expected to be released, but the man said he could only delay their execution until they dealt with the person who cast the spell on them. The criminals tried to object, but the young man kept speaking and said that if they cooperated, they could die as people, not monsters. The men finally began to take the words of someone they had not taken seriously, so the young man again asked them to be honest with him. The young man said the detainees benefit from confessing because cooperating may anger their leader but will keep them alive. The man said that although people will remain in prison, they will not be tortured and can die without becoming monsters, adding that while imprisoned the criminals will finally be able to think calmly about their lives. The bandits protested and did not trust him, so he assured them there was no reason to kill them that night. One of the criminals said it was not worth the risk, since even if they confessed everything they would still be killed. The man replied there was no risk because the bandits understood the situation they were in, and the young man said the knights had found the bandits' lair by accident, but were clearly wondering how it had happened. If the knights learn their leader's location this way, he'll assume someone in the gang told them everything. The man glared at the others and demanded to know what their leader would do next, since the leader would suspect anyone captured by the knights, and the bandit froze in fear. The young man said he gives criminals the right to choose, because they can either die peacefully or become puppets in the wrong hands. The young man added that his offer would be valid until tomorrow and hoped the men would make the right decision. After finishing, he said goodbye to the bandits as the knights came to take them to the dungeon. At the meeting room exit, his grandfather and a girl in armor were waiting, and when they looked at him in surprise, he felt a little embarrassed and asked them to stop. The older man noticed the young man had a knack for that kind of talk, so the young man could easily set up pyramid schemes, but he clearly did not want that life. Ilias asked whether the criminals would say anything tomorrow, and the man said he doubted it but had a request for Grandpa Karg. With a plan in mind, the young man asked her to listen, and the curious girl heard every word, but when he revealed the plan, Ilias could not believe what she had just heard. The young man said there was nothing strange about it and that there were no other options. Grandfather Cargo agreed, but Ilias was still unhappy with the plan. After a while, the man in the dungeon complained that he and his comrades were kept in separate cells, so he could not discuss anything with them. As the bandit thought about his next move, he remembered how Dakota had made them look closely at what disobedience could turn them into. The bandit leader showed what happened to traitors, so men feared to work with the knights. When it was time to change the guards, Grandfather Cargo asked if anyone had told him anything important, but the knight said all the criminals were silent. The bandit was pleased, since it showed his comrades had not betrayed one another. The knight said the execution would be delayed for a while, but that would mean the prisoners would need more food. Grandfather Cargo replied that this was not a problem, because the executions would be delayed for only 3, and the rest would be killed soon to avoid wasting resources. The bandit grew nervous. Grandfather Cargo said that even if all the criminals agreed to cooperate, they would give the same information, so keeping only 3 of them alive would be enough. Hearing the guards' conversation, the bandit realized what the young interrogator meant. Their leader would not care who betrayed him and would suspect anyone who was caught. The criminal made his decision and summoned the guard, saying he would tell everything he knew and asking that the young man who had interrogated them be brought as soon as possible. Grandpa Cargo asked why the conversation couldn't wait until tomorrow, which made the bandit very angry, but the guard said the boy was asleep, so it would be easier to write his thoughts down on paper for now. After the man handed the bandit a piece of paper and a pencil, the bandit hesitated again, but thinking of the fate of those who would be killed, he decided to write as much information as he could for the knights. The man cursed but continued writing everything he remembered about his leader, while Grandfather Cargo stood nearby watching the bandit. The next morning, Ilissa said 5 of the 7 criminals had decided to reveal everything they knew, and a man eating breakfast said he would speak with them again to get the details. Trying to get confessions from the prisoners, the young man realized the girl wasn't giving hers and looked at her questioningly. Refusing to give up the sheets, Elias looked at the young man and asked what kind of person he had been before coming to the new world. She didn't know anything about the man's past because he never talked about himself, so she was doubtful of his motives, and she clearly didn't like that he took advantage of people's weaknesses. Ilias said criminals and their associates usually behave this way, but the young man quickly interrupted the girl's suspicions and said he was an ordinary man who wanted a quiet life. The armored girl couldn't believe it because she still didn't understand why the man had used that method to get information. Calmly responding to the suspicions, the young man said a peaceful life means not wanting to cause problems or get into trouble. In his previous world, there were many ways to learn other people's views, and contacting many people could lead to meetings that were either helpful or problematic. To live a normal life, a person must know how to protect himself from bad people and how to act around them. That was exactly how the young man's past life went. Ilias couldn't tell what the man was really like because he behaved one way with her and another with the bandits. The young man said he simply adapts his behavior to whoever is in front of him. The man also said Ilias behaved like a knight in any company, which made him different from the young man, and because of that the girl assumed he would turn evil when he met evil, but the young man said he would only become someone who understands evil. With no reply to the young man's words, the blonde girl watched him sip his tea for a while, then collected her thoughts, lifted her mug, and said she understood everything now. That night echoed the man's words, and a warped mirror made the young man smile. The couple drank tea, and then the girl said that living a peaceful life is not so easy. Maya gathered the three and said that after reviewing the information from the criminals, some conclusions can be drawn. Reports showed the bandits had united into a large organization called the Bandit Alliance, led by a one-armed man who used forbidden magic. Dakota headed the alliance and had once served in a kingdom's assassination squad. May added that after he broke the ban he became wanted, committed several crimes in Garn, and ended up in the kingdom of Theus. The young man realized Dakota had used the knowledge he gained in his criminal life, so it wouldn't be hard to deal with him once his habits were known. Ilias interrupted the young man's thoughts and said the man looked like a villain, which Maya agreed with after reviewing the information, and when he went into the city, he noticed the kingdom of Ties he had entered was very prosperous. He also remembered he couldn't enjoy the street because Ilias had carried him in a bag, and after that he never went outside so casually. The man assumed the king was a good ruler, and Ilias replied that both the current and former heirs had taken great care of the people, so the girl was happy to serve as a knight for the good of the kingdom. Ilias said that as their country prospered, more merchants came, but wrongdoers could also come to Telis and had to be dealt with. He noted the bandits were highly organized, so it would be hard to catch them all, and she said she would summon all the knights of Lord Ragdo. Lord Ragdo is a royal general who protects the kingdom of Thais, and Ilias served under him. The young man asked how many knights Ilias commanded, and she replied there were only 30. After that, the man asked if there were other squads, because it would be much easier if the girl asked them to join, but Ilias drooped a little when he heard that. The girl agreed with the young man and said she should not put her reputation above everything, so she should seek help. Ilias knew the citizens' safety was paramount, so she immediately called a meeting to ask the other squads for help. The young man asked if they could hold the meeting in the barracks, and when the girl asked why, he said he was only a stranger she had recently found, so he probably would not be allowed into the castle. Because the man was serious about the case, he did not want anyone to discuss his plan without him. After hearing his offer, Ilias waited until nightfall and gathered everyone who could help her in the building next to the castle. Thanking everyone for meeting her so late, the girl began to explain what she wanted to discuss with the audience. The Lord cut her off and told her not to go into details. The man then turned to the audience and asked how many knights the commanders were willing to provide to help Ilias. Lord Ragdo, after hearing his comrades, said he commanded the most knights, 300, so he had to take command himself. The young man standing nearby saw the Lord for what he was, since he clearly did not want to help and only wanted to take the case for himself. Grandfather Cargo told the boy that not all men would recognize Ilias's merits and position because she was a woman. As the commanders argued, he thought it didn't matter whether a man or a woman led the mission, only how well they got the job done. Grandpa Karg was tired of hearing that men were harassing Ilias and did not trust her with the case she had managed from the start. Pointing at the young man, an adult asked him to say what he thought so the commanders would stop talking nonsense. Silence fell as everyone turned to the man who had almost gone unnoticed, and Lord Ragdo asked the old man what kind of person he was. The old man replied that the young man was the one who could give the knights the necessary information about the bandits, so he clearly had the right to speak. When the Lord asked him if he objected to the command, he said it made sense to command whoever had the largest army. If the Lord wanted to be commander-in-chief, he had to know every detail of the task. To explain his thoughts, the young man took out a map and unfolded it on the table. The man pointed out that the bandits' routes were marked on the map, and the young man suggested assigning everyone's roles in the squad now. Realizing the young man was well prepared for the conversation, the Lord confirmed the young man's expectation that he would be responsible for the area where the organization's leader is based. He continued assigning the other commanders detachments, so no important area was missed, but when the distribution reached Ilias, no one answered the young man's question about who wanted to work with her, and the room fell silent. The young man stayed calm and said Lady Razzle would be held in reserve to help with supplies on the trade road, and her squad would step in if any of the main units could not handle the task. Lord Ragdo approved the man's decision and told him to continue deploying the kingdom's forces, but Ilias hadn't expected what happened. The girl was indignant and angry at the young man for not standing up for her and for following Lord Ragdo's wishes. At the start of the operation, the man tried to reason with the woman, but she ignored him even though she knew the supply squad was a vital part of the plan. What worried him most was not her mood, but that she was walking too fast and didn't want to carry him this time. The man still hoped he would gain traits for living in the new world, but they never appeared. At that time, Grandfather Kargu apologized to Ilias for not standing up for her properly. As the knights talked among themselves, the man suddenly lost all strength to walk, which his companions later noticed. Meanwhile, as the supply squad moved through the forest, Lord Ragdo's squad was already fighting the bandits they had discovered. Confused, the criminals could not understand how the knights had found them and tried to hide so they could tell their boss they had been discovered. The squad leader ordered the knights to kill everyone they caught and leave no survivors. Entering the bandits' camp, the man said he could not imagine how useful the document belonging to the man he had shown them would be. The Lord liked how the young man he did not know behaved at the meeting, and was surprised that Lady Ratzel had managed to get information from the bandits. Above all, the Lord admired that she asked him for help and then became reserved, so the man wanted to honor his family even more with his deed. A strange shape under the tent pulled the commander out of his thoughts. A person lay beneath the cloth and did not move. When the Lord saw the corpse, he knew he had to check who was inside, so he pulled back the cloth and went in. Seconds later, the corpse came to life, and the Lord realized the bandits from the camp had been struck by a death spirit spell. Two criminals escaped the knights and ran to their boss to report that someone had betrayed them. Ducola was annoyed and surprised that anyone would go against him, since all his subordinates knew the punishment for betrayal. Unmoved, the man smiled wickedly and said he still had a plan for this outcome, while the battle raged as knights attacked criminals who no longer looked human, and the revived corpses moved under the bandit leader's command. Lord Ragdo fought with his squad, but he could not understand how the enemy could use magic when the knights had special anti-magic stones, and monsters were clearly more useful to the enemy in battle because they did not die from wounds fatal to humans. The commander warned his squad to be careful because if a knight dies, he will become a monster, and the Lord also talked about people using magic to destroy the dead. The gang leader tried to run off with several men, but the Lord saw it in time and ordered the fugitives caught. The commander knew that sooner or later someone in his squad could die and then become a dangerous threat to his former allies. During the battle, Ducalo ran as far from the camp as he could, saying people are more useful after they die. One of the subordinates asked the boss why his magic still worked even though the knights had anti-magic stones. The organization head said anti-magic stones do not dispel the magic around them, but only sever its connections. The subordinate did not understand what Ducola meant, so Ducola explained that the spirit of death spell was special because it was forbidden. The spell put a soul into a corpse and turned it into a zombie that once destroyed whole countries, but its benefit was that the dead gave off mana that affected nearby zombies. The gang leader briefly repeated that it didn't matter whether the knights had stones. As long as corpses were around, he could create new zombies. Ducola had hidden several of the living dead inside a barrier near the camp, and as soon as the stones came near, the barrier was destroyed, after which a crowd of angry dead attacked a squad of knights. On top of that, if someone gets too close to a person who is dying, they will definitely turn into a zombie, even if someone else killed them. The man said this to further intimidate his subordinate. Frightened, the man nearly dropped the bag, so Dakota warned him to watch his treasure. The gang leader also said he was even grateful to the knights. Dupola realized that if his whole team survived, he would have to share the treasures, so fewer people would be better. Ilias cut off the man's monologue when she saw criminals running away from her. Ilias said she felt no joy. Ducola thanked the knights. A girl in armor stood on a small slope and watched those she had been hunting for so long, with her whole squad standing behind her, and Ilias Ratzel introduced herself to the enemy and said that today the path of the Dokal bandit leader would end. The man had clearly not expected to meet the royal knights again, but he did not flinch and simply said the girl was wrong, while Elias showed no emotion as she came down the slope and faced her enemy without fear. The man stopped and asked who had shown her the route he would take to retreat, since it was clearly someone else. Ilya insisted she had found the path the head of the organization would use to flee, but Kola did not believe her. He refused to believe that a girl had revealed his plan and used the other knights as bait to detain Doko herself. The group's leader said he hadn't meant to sound arrogant that night and that he knew a man who understood how the common people lived. After he spoke, a dark-haired young man appeared near Ilias, the one Dakota had mentioned. The guy stepped closer to the girl and told Grandpa he could handle the car. Grandpa was surprised because the guy did not look like a fighter at all. The young man did not deny it and said he was sure he was the weakest among those present. The bandit leader asked how the boy had found where they were, and the young man said he had just been lucky to stumble on him while lost in the mountains. Amused by the answer, the man also asked how the young man had negotiated with the captured criminals, and the young man answered truthfully again how he had done it. The leader also asked if the boy believed the living had their own purpose, and the young man said they did only as long as they were useful. After a brief talk, the criminal asked his final question about what kind of magic the boy had used to track him. The man looked at his companion seriously and said it was most likely called understanding, and the gang leader seemed quite satisfied with the answer. In fact, the man expected the one-armed fighter to try to escape during the fight because he knew his own strength, so it was no surprise he had escape routes. The young man realized the man used a death spirit spell to control the bandits through fear, and he was planning another outing before the mission because they hadn't found a single corpse that day. The bandit leader probably didn't take pity and bury the bodies, since someone like him wouldn't do that. The young man wondered what the man was doing with the corpses. Thinking this, the man figured that if the bodies had disappeared, they were likely moved somewhere they could be of use. Looking at the boy again, the crime boss asked who he was because he would make a great villain, but the boy said he was just an ordinary civilian. The man didn't believe it, since an ordinary person couldn't read the scum's thoughts, so the leader asked where the boy came from, and the young man replied that only criminals can do whatever they want, but the man already knew exactly who he was talking to and smiled maliciously. The man looked again at the boy's dark hair and eyes and said the boy had clearly lived on Earth before. The young man did not believe him. After the man's sharp reaction, the criminal realized he was right and said she really did exist. The young man, confused, asked how the bandit knew about Earth. The man laughed and said he had known about the other world for a long time. Then the bandit grew angry and shouted that the spirit of death spell, which destroyed his life and brought dark times to the world, and the magic to revive the dead were all caused by the Earth. Earth was the cursed parallel world that created all the forbidden techniques, and the bandit's words stunned the young man, with even Ilias behind him unable to hide her surprise. The young man could not believe that the resurrection magic was made by someone born on Earth. Looking at Ilias, he realized she knew nothing and saw no point in lying to the doll. Because the man had that information, the young man thought he would not be killed immediately. He asked the bandit leader what else he knew about Earth, but the man said he did not know much. The criminal told the boy to find out for himself, since the boy now had something new to think about. The bandit then thanked him for the chance to talk to someone interesting, pulled out a knife, and attacked the young man. Ilias repelled the opponent's attack just in time, sending 2 knives to the ground and surprising the young man because the opponent fought with only one hand. The armored girl told the young man to stand still so she could protect him more easily. He did not object and agreed. Dakota ordered his men to attack the knights and warned that any who disobeyed would be turned into zombies. The gang leader could not stand by because the knights were trying to neutralize him as fast as they could. Ilias attacked a man who, because of her strength, could only defend himself and was more vulnerable with one hand, and after Dokula blocked her attack he praised her, saying it was the first time he had seen anyone so strong. The girl ignored the compliments because the bandit was clearly enjoying himself, and the man was a little annoyed she would not play along but still acknowledged he understood why she led the squad. After a brief talk, the band decided to show another knife trick, tossing it high into the sky. The knife was wrapped in dark energy, and Ilias, seeing this, ordered one of the knights to shield the young man with a protective barrier. The man did not expect to be attacked again, so he relaxed a little when a magic knight approached him. Ilias added that Dakota had used a death spirit spell. The bandit leader praised the girl again for her quick wit, then hurried to remind her that the men beside him would carry out any order he gave. After Dokul spoke, a large monster lunged at Ilias with a heavy sword, but she managed to deflect the blow. Seeing her opponent, the knight realized she had already defeated him in the cave, and a man confirmed it was the same one. The gang leader also pointed out that the girl had no sacred weapon, so she would have a harder time fighting the dead. Once the death spirit spell fully covers the nearby area, the monsters will keep fighting even if the doll is destroyed. Ilias stayed calm, raised her sword, and said she would have to take on everyone to end the fight. The armored girl then turned to her team and told them to start jumping. Confused by what Ilias wanted to achieve, the young man was surprised at how high the knights jumped, and when Dakoa realized the rival's plan, he began scattering anti-magic balls and shouted that he would not allow her to use magic. Confronted by a cluster of anti-magic stones, the girl simply said she had no intention of using magic at all. Ilias only wanted to deal with the original source of the problem, so she wiped out the lingering mana from the dead with a single blow, which amazed everyone. The girl in armor fought confidently, sensibly assessing the unfolding situation on the battlefield. Ilias advised Okal to use every trick he had to finish faster. Okal agreed, which surprised the young man guarded by the knight. The bandit used what the young man called a smoke screen, surprising his opponents. The girl screamed at the man when she realized he wanted to avoid fighting her, and he admitted he only wanted to escape. When the bandit moved a little away from the girl, a spear thrown from the forest struck him. Wounded, Dakota could not get up. He looked at Ilias and accused her of cheating, but the young man assured her she did not know anything. The man realized the other had guessed his escape because Dakota had already slipped past the knights, and the young man, seeing his plan was working, specifically warned Grandfather Kaga. The young man realized the best time to attack was when Dakolia began pointing out the opponent's mistakes, since the opponent would then try to escape. The bandit asked whether this was the same tactic the young man had used, but he was relieved that the man who exposed his plan had been the one to defeat him. Dakola began talking to the young man and said that under other circumstances they would clearly have become friends, but the man replied that he did not like killers. The man also said he would hardly have left the right path by his own choice, so the other man changed the subject. The bandit said that among his belongings was a map marking a very secret place. He looked at the young man and said it was a parting gift for someone who had caught his interest. The young man was surprised that a criminal could stay so calm and cheerful in that situation. Nicola asked the bandit for his name. The young man agreed, but it was already too late because Ilias raised his sword above the bandit's head. In his final moment, the man heard the name of the person he was talking to and smiled. Ilias cut off the bandit's head before their conversation ended. Wiping blood from her sword, Ilias asked if the young man wanted to tell her something, since the enemy clearly knew something about his home world. The young man replied that the enemy had already accepted his fate, so he accepted his punishment. The young man doubted he would have learned anything else, said he wouldn't have minded if Dakota had lived a little longer, and added that the girl killed the criminal because it was necessary since he might try to escape again or fight back. Ilias protested that he was too badly injured to fight, but the man insisted the girl had done nothing wrong and said he only came up with various schemes to catch the bandit. The girl started arguing again and said the young man's plan made sense, though she did not like it, and the young man sighed and said that if she felt better he would hear her explanation for killing Dokkel when he was already defenseless. Apologizing, Ilias first said she was scared, then corrected herself and said she felt disgusted watching the young men's expressions as they talked to the criminal. She reminded him of the crooked mirror analogy. Since the young man heard about Dakota, he started to resemble him. After the guy spoke to him, Elise became more anxious. The girl thought that if the conversation went on, the young man would side with him, so she could not hold back. He realized what he truly felt, that he and Dakota understood each other even though his interlocutor was a murderer, and he did not condemn the girl, but praised her for keeping him on the right path. Though Ilias blamed herself for her recklessness, the young man praised her again and said she had done the right thing. The young man also noted that the girl acted after analyzing the likely outcomes, making her decision commendable. Ilias relaxed a little, but she didn't understand why the young man spoke to her like a child, and he replied that he was older than her. Surprised by what she heard, the girl replied when the man asked how old Ilias was, and after she said she was 18, he simply confirmed he was older. She couldn't believe he was actually older than her, so she suspected there were elves in his family. The young man said he was just an ordinary person. Hearing how the young man addressed her, Ilias guessed he couldn't be older than 16, since he was Japanese and genuinely looked like a teenager. When she learned about the age difference, she quickly apologized, but he told her not to worry. Confused, Ilias decided to act like someone over 18. Confused, Ilias did not expect the young man to become so serious, so she blushed and agreed he should act more mature from now on, and after the mission they rode back in a cart instead of walking. Finally, the knights destroyed all the remaining bases without losses, and with Maya's help eliminated all the zombies. They were wounded, but no one in Lord Ragdo's squad died. The young man thought Commander Leonor was a capable warrior who needed to be more tactful, and he learned that Duck Hall's head would be displayed publicly. What worried him most was that some people knew about the Earth, and that people on Earth had developed forbidden techniques. The man realized he still had a long way to go before he could settle into a calm, ordinary life in the new world. As the troops returned to the Thai's kingdom, a man with animal ears and a tail sat in a tent somewhere in the mountain forests. As soon as night fell, the man looked out of his hiding place but did not know what to do. After a while, the young man finally woke in a regular bed in a private room, sat up slightly, and realized he felt rested for the first time since arriving in this world. He was still worried about how sore his muscles were after the mission. Thinking back to the previous day, the young man remembered his conversation with Ilias after returning to the kingdom. She asked what he wanted to do, and he said he first needed permission to stay in the country, which she said would not be a problem. After that, the young man looked for a permanent place to stay and asked Ilias for advice, decided to learn a new language because he remembered he was still under the spell, and sought a part-time job to cover daily needs and save for a new house. The girl said he would not be able to do everything he wanted. The young man thought it would be better to return to prison, where he would be fed. Ilias sighed and said the young man could expect better conditions, and the girl offered him a place in her home until he found somewhere to sleep. Ilias said there were rooms in her house, and when she added he would not have to pay for that night's stay, the young man was delighted and quickly agreed. Later, the girl suspected this might have been the man's plan from the start, since he agreed too quickly. The young man assured her he only wanted to avoid causing problems, and that living with a woman would spare him from having to think about many things. Thanks to the kindness he received, Ilias, a young man thrown into another world with absolutely nothing, began a new life. The lonely house near the market now sheltered him temporarily in one of its rooms. Not wanting to stay home, he went for a walk to look around and covered his striking black hair because it stood out. At the market, he saw many people selling produce from their vegetable gardens. A copper coin was worth 100 yen, a silver coin 1,000 yen, and a gold coin 10,000 yen, so market prices were easy to understand because they matched Japanese prices. Walking through the market and wondering why there was no salty food, the man saw someone fall beside him. A hurried girl fell at his feet, spilling her basket of fruits and vegetables. He asked if she was okay. The girl got up, thanked the young man for his concern, and said she was fine, but when someone saw she had destroyed another person's basket and became very upset, the young man decided to help her avoid trouble. The young man put a basket in front of the girl and told her to gather everything into it, and she then realized he had bought the items that had crumbled because of her. To avoid disturbing passers-by, he hurried away from the center of the street. She thanked the man who saved her and quickly introduced herself. When they reached the building, she said her name was Sarah and that the tavern was hers, called Dogbone. The man wasn't impressed by the name, so someone pushed him. A man stepped out of the building and asked who the young man beside the girl was, and after the girl explained what had happened, he relented and realized he had just helped him. Seeing the young man's goodness, the owner of the Dog Bone Tavern introduced himself as Gauze. He then offered to pay for the basket, but the young man asked for lunch instead of money. Still, Sayers said the tavern's food wasn't good, but he had no choice, so while he waited for his meal, he asked her a little about the new city. Cyrus studied and worked as a waitress in her spare time to fulfill her dream of opening a clothing store. She said no one wants to take her as an apprentice, so she teaches herself and uses the money she earns to buy clothes while trying to sew her own. Sayara smiled because she enjoyed what she was doing, and the young man immediately noticed how positive his new friend was. Realizing how different he was from her made him falter a little, but she cut him off and asked where he came from and where he was staying. The young man said the good night had helped him and borrowed a room to stay in, and when he revealed the guest tonight was Ilias Ratzel of the Ragdo Squad, the tavern owner, and the waitress were shocked. They were stunned that the man was talking about someone who could fell an entire forest with a single blow. The young man did not realize his friend was so famous, and Sierra said everyone in the country knew her. She added that Lady Ilias had won the Thai Swordsman tournament, defeating all the knights with her strength, and he tried to change the subject by saying he still knew the old hag, but Sierra already knew about him. Grandfather turned out to be the Lord of the Spear, one of the top 5 masters of the TSA spear. The young man slumped a little when he realized he was surrounded by famous people. Sarah asked whether he had helped catch the bandits from the mountain, and the young man said he had only pointed the way. She said she would like to see Lady Ilias in battle someday. When the young man told her battle was an unpleasant sight, she fell silent. Noticing how upset the girl was, the man felt he probably should not have said such serious things to her, and later Syra repeated that Lady Laius is a wonderful person though many people disagree. the girl quickly insisted she was not among them, but the man understood anyway. A young man decided to cheer up a new acquaintance, telling her not to worry because Elise will always win against evil, and Sarah smiled again. When Gauze brought the cooked dish, the young man thought of bringing Ilgi because she had supporters. As soon as he tasted it, he spat the food out immediately. Sarah asked whether it was that bad. The food tasted bad, so the young man decided to bring Elias here only when the tavern had something better. Seeing his reaction, Sarah reminded him she had warned him. After meeting Gauze and Sarah, the young man went back to the church and asked Maya for help. Maya noticed how quickly he had made new friends. Having eaten dinner at church the other day and finding the food pretty good, the young man decided to tell a girl he knew about it. After describing gyoza, he asked Maya to teach him how to cook at least one delicious dish. Seeing his new acquaintances speechless, the young man asked Maya if she was some kind of celebrity. God could not believe that the young man had asked the head of the church to teach him how to cook. Maya answered his question by saying she used to be one of the demon slayers. The young man then asked if the girl had free time, and Maya said she had just finished her report. Maya began to relax and said junior staff usually handle the paperwork, and when the girl agreed, the man said he would leave Goza to her, also noting that salt was not sold in this country. The girl said salt is a delicacy for the nobility. The man told me that in his homeland salt is readily available to the public. Maya said she should speak to the trading company about lowering salt prices and ensuring steady supplies. The young man asked the girl to give more details about the person handling the sale and wanted to ask about the carrier spell. After hearing the second part of the request, Maya was surprised and asked if the young man had any problems, but he said he was only wondering how long it would last. According to Maya, the magic lasts a week after it's applied, so the burden has 4 days left, and then the girl will renew the spell again. Noticing the girl's reaction, the young man asked if there was a problem with the spell, and after a short pause he realized he was being played. Maya said she hadn't used that kind of spell in a long time, so she thought she'd made a mistake when she cast it on the young man. She hurried to reassure him that things were not so bad, but there would be minor side effects, and when he asked what they were, she said he would feel muscle pain after a while. The girl remembered that the muscle pain would not appear right away, but could get worse over time. When she mentioned the side effects, he realized which muscles hurt in the morning. The man suddenly felt pain all over again and asked the girl to cure him with magic. Maya said it was impossible to heal that, and a loud cry of pain rang through the church. Deciding not to delay, the young man went to the shopping area as soon as he could, accompanied by Sarah, and a girl met them at the entrance and asked the couple to follow her. The girl led the young man and another girl into a room where they waited for the right person, who arrived soon, and the man who entered said his name was Ban, and that he was the head of the trading company they had come to. Ban said he had read the letter and realized people came to him for the salt. The man said he would give Maya's friends a discount, but that did not suit the guy. The young man said they weren't here for a discount, but to lower the country's salt price, and the man, surprised by his persistence, asked the young man to explain more about what he wanted. Salt cost 1 gold coin per kilogram, equal to 10,000 yen, so the young man could not understand why it was so rare. Remembering his talk with Maya, he told her that in his homeworld salt was an essential nutrient and even sparked wars. The girl said this was caused by magical energy because vegetables and grains were full of it. It provided nutrients that were also affected by the soil. The young man realized the magical energy came from the minerals, and Maya wondered why the burden had so little of it. Maybe he just didn't eat well. Salt is not in high demand in this world, so it has kept its prestige. The young man repeated that he wanted to boost demand for salt. The guy said increasing the number of deliveries could lower the price, and Ban agreed, but another man added that an immediate price cut was not possible and asked the guy what he thought. As evening fell, people who wanted to drink gathered at the Dog Bone Tavern. Sire served drinks and new bar snacks so guests could try them. Noticing a dish he had not ordered on his table, the man asked the waitress what was on it, and she said it was the tavern's new menu. Sarah pointed out that everything was free and they should try it, but the men knew that Gauze had cooked it and didn't really want to eat. I tried it and the men were surprised by how much they liked it and thought it wasn't Gauze who did it. Adding salt to the potatoes and chips made them much tastier, so the men liked them. To attract customers, a young man started by giving away free snacks, and it worked. Ciara was pleased the guests now asked her to serve food instead of just cheap alcohol. The young man said their meeting with Ban had been very successful. Ciara made the young man seem very serious, so Ban wanted to meet him. The young man also noticed the man spoke to him politely, so they felt lucky. Visitors interrupted the conversation and called the waitress over because they wanted to try many new dishes. From that day on, rumors spread about the tavern's new menu, and Ciara was busy until nightfall. After closing, the girl collapsed onto the table from exhaustion because she had never done a shift like that before. Goss apologized to the guy for needing his help as well, since he hadn't expected so many people. While he worked at the tavern, Ilyas sat down to dinner alone at home, but could not eat properly because it was late and he still had not come back. The knight pushed those thoughts away and decided the young man would return tomorrow. When morning came, the young man's muscles hurt again, and there was nothing he could do about it. Also on his mind was the tavern's staff shortage. The problem was soon solved when Gauze hired several elderly women to help him. The most overbearing was Grandfather Cargo's wife. The next morning he went to the bathhouse for salt, met an old man there, and explained the tavern problem to him. After the old man listened to the young man, he suggested that he talk to his wife so that she would help with Gauze. The young man doubted his grandmother would be useful, but Cargo assured him she was very energetic and had invited several other wives who were staying at home with her. Full of energy, the woman gladly accepted the young man's offer because she did not want to stay home. The man asked if she could work all day, and she said her husband did not want her to feel lonely, so everything would be fine. He realized it wasn't hard for a woman to start working, and her husband would stop feeling guilty. The woman led the men out of the tavern to keep them from interfering with her and her friend's work, and told them to take a walk. So the young man and the old man took her advice and went for a walk while the weather was good. Pulling out the map, the man asked Grandpa Karga to look at it, but Grandpa Karga did not understand why. He explained that the points on the map showed where Dakota had hidden the treasures and also marked the bandits' bases and caves. Before he died, the bandit said something important was hidden at one of the bases, so the young man thought it was related to the Earth. After checking the map, he realized the hardest part would be reaching the most remote base, which might hold whatever was hidden. The man asked what had happened to the original maps, and the old man said Ilyas had taken them to Lord Ragdo to be given to the king. The young man realized that once the map reached the king, the bases would be searched. Grandfather Cargo said the hikes would start in a few days. He didn't know if he'd have time to search anywhere, and didn't expect the old man to tell him to leave right away. Grandfather Cargo saw the boy wanted to find out what gift the criminal had left him, so he handed the card back. Unsure if they could search for the treasures themselves, the young man hesitated, and the old man said they had to hurry before it became forbidden, so they mounted their horses and set off to find bandit bases. When they reached the forest, the group left the animals behind to travel light, and one man asked if they would be all right, while another replied that the horses would be able to stand up for themselves if attacked. Hearing this, the young man asked whether such strong horses might attack an ordinary passerby, but the old man assured him everything would be fine. As they walked through the forest, one man asked whether the man had really defeated the wyvern by throwing a helmet at it. The old man was surprised by how old the story sounded to the young man. The man agreed and threw the helmet, sparing his spear because the hag loved it very much. After finishing his short story, the old man cleared away the branches and told the young man to follow him, and the young man found the cave entrance on the map, marked in a different color. Grandfather Kargu warned the young man to be careful. Then everyone entered the cave while lighting a torch, and inside the traveler saw nothing dangerous or unusual. Ordinary straw covered the floor, knives, magic stones, and barrels for battles lay about, and a diary or old book in the drawer held the gems. Holding the book, the young man saw how old it was and assumed it was Dockel's diary, but when he read the inscription he froze, and the old man, noticing his partner's reaction, asked what had happened. Grandfather stepped closer, but seeing the inscription realized he could not read it because it was in a foreign language. After a few seconds, the young man said the inscription was in Japanese, so only the young man could understand it. The old man looked confused and asked if Japanese had been the young man's native language in his previous world. The young man confirmed and said the diary stated the book was the fourth sample of the Blue Demon King's surveillance records. Both the young man and the old man looked at the book that had finally appeared in their hands. It was the fourth set of observations about the Blue Demon King. This was the parting gift Decola had mentioned, without any doubt. Cargo asked whether the young man wanted to read it. Horrors he'd been told about earlier filled the young man's thoughts, including the creation of a demon king, a forbidden resurrection spell, and the fact that an earthling had used them. Holding a battered book with the title label barely clinging in place, the boy turned to the hag to tell him how things were going in a serious tone. The old man was stunned to learn the boy came from another world, but he still tried to believe the young man's words. The young man asked him not to tell anyone about what had happened because he did not want Elias and Maya to know about the book. The old man realized he did not want to risk his relationship with them, so he asked the young man what he wanted. The question surprised the boy, but he replied that he wanted to read the book, just not now. The old man said he would miss his opportunity. The boy replied he would be alone if he read it. If the book gets out, the world will change, and Kargu nodded and promised to keep the secret. The young man smiled broadly as he spoke of his trust in grandfather Karg. He feared that if anyone found out he could be tortured, so he turned to the old man and asked for a favor. The man looked up as if he already knew what was being asked. The old man promised the young man he could rely on him and would deliver the book to Lord Ragdo and the king. The boy smiled at the old man's words and handed him the book. The companions left the cave, with Kargu walking ahead and lighting the way with his torch. The boy told himself it was for the best. Kargu is a well-respected knight. Problems would arise if the man read the book in front of him. Even if the man had read the diary, it was unclear whether the old man would keep it secret because the knights were loyal to the king. True to his knighthood, the old man will never break his oath. That ensures the promise made to them will be kept. After leaving the cave, Kargu went to confirm that everything was in order. Even so, the situation has become very serious. The boy smiled and said he hoped to live in safety and be accepted by others, and they soon returned to the village. Kargu drove on after saying goodbye to the young man, who went to the house and was already greeted there by a girl. The man cried out in surprise at what he saw. Ilya sat on the doorstep, clearly angry. The boy was surprised to see the girl waiting and asked how long she had been sitting at the entrance, and she said she had been there since morning. The man realized that if Grandpa took a day off, Ilya's could rest during that time. Ilya's replied in frustration that she had been left alone all day and felt lonely, but it was a good experience for her. Feeling guilty, a young man rushed to apologize to the girl who had sheltered him. After apologizing, he invited her to dinner, but she cut him off, saying they had no food. The young man told her everything was fine because he had found a tavern where good people work, and the girl realized where he had been all this time. When the young man tried to tell the knight about the recent campaign with the hag, she also accused him of having fun with someone else again, not with her. The girl's gaze softened and she apologized, saying she had overstepped because she wanted to spend her day off with someone but got too excited. Ilya realized the young man had his own plans and that she was still inexperienced. The boy was surprised by her words. The young man suddenly slapped his cheeks with his palms, startling Ilyas, and asked her to wait while he changed before they went for a walk. Ilyas was surprised by his change in behavior. After he changed his clothes, they went to the place where he usually spent his time. Approaching the building, the girl could not believe they had come to the Dog Bone because she knew this place. The girl knew the tavern had good drinks but poor food, so she thought she was being punished, while the young man knew she would soon change her mind. Confident that everything was fine, the young man turned away, walked into the crowded tavern, and motioned for the confused girl to follow. The waitress greeted them, but her expression changed suddenly. Ilyas caused the change. Saria ran up to her and began to admire and praise the girl. The boy was surprised by Saria's enthusiasm, but quickly accepted it. Ilyas showed no sign of her old resentment. From the back of the tavern, a voice called the waitress. The young man stared at the noisy visitors in horror, then noted there had been even more of them lately, and asked if the girl was ready to listen while watching Ilyas try new dishes. Surprised, the girl found the food here really delicious, but she felt pessimistic again because the young man managed to get so much done in one day while she hadn't. The young man asked what Ilya thought of Sarah's greeting. The knight answered that she was surprised, even amazed, and probably glad. The boy told her that Ilyas was popular with the people, not just with the knights of the Ragdo squad. Ilyas had always wanted to be as great a knight as her father. She still noticed that someone else's opinion could strongly influence her. The kid agreed with Ilyas. That explained why people feel bad when accused and good when praised. The young man believed that removing that inexperience would weaken his heart. Otherwise, Father Ilyas would be a man who killed his heart and became cold-blooded. Ilyas reacted angrily to that remark because her father was a good man. Memories flashed before the girl's eyes. Her father smiled and thanked her for the wreath of flowers, and a young man told her not to be ashamed of being inexperienced, to hold on to happiness, move forward, and turn her anger into strength. She smiled gratefully at the young man's confident expression. In battle, Ilyas was without a doubt the best knight. In every other way, she was less capable than a girl her age should be. The girl believed that if she did not behave according to her status, she would be no better than a beginner, but the boy interrupted and said that was not true. The knight reminded the young man of his former self because the girl still clung to a faint hope in people. Since she felt upset and betrayed, he knew bringing her to the tavern had been the right choice. Enough friends were here to always support the girl, so the young man brought her there. Amid the noise of merriment, Ilyas rose from the table to join the general fun. These people will be her strength. The fun continued despite the hag's wife grumbling about the guests crowding the room. The next morning was sunny and calm. Ilya woke with a heavy head and struggled to get out of bed. Reluctant memories scrolled before my eyes. Getting drunk yesterday had not been that bad. Burrowing into the blanket and squeezing the soft fabric, the girl smiled to herself because she had a lot of fun. At the castle, life continued as usual. Kargu walked through the richly furnished corridors to the correct office. In the study, Lord Ragdor greeted the old knight. He came to report to the commander of the chivalric forces of the Kingdom of Theas. Handing the battered book to the lord, the hag faced a real question about what it contained. The old man said he had investigated it himself, using a map left by the Bandit Alliance leader. The lord examined the cover and asked how the hag had learned about it. The old man felt embarrassed by the remark and chose his words, but the lord, reading the words in an incomprehensible language, said the hag had nothing to worry about. And then, looking at his faithful man, the lord asked the main question whether the man had read this book. Kneeling at once, the knight swore that the first thing he would do was deliver the book to the lord without opening it. The lord believed the old man and immediately guessed who had been with the hag. The lord put the book on the table and explained himself. Maya told him about it while Ilya stayed silent, yet the man still asked whether the young man really came from another world. The old man looked at the lord and asked him to keep everything secret. The lord chuckled and agreed it would stay between them. The lord assumed Cargo had not opened the book, but knowing the young man could read the title, he replied that it was the fourth sample of the Blue Demon King's research records. The lord saw that the darkest part of their world's history was the Demon Kings, and Blue was the fourth of them, and he needed to find where the book came from, but knew it was better not to involve many people. By now the young man felt he needed to try harder to find work because he was still dependent on a woman, and a good option was to ask a merchant or someone like that for advice. Lost in thought, he reached the trading company's building. It had been 3 days since his last visit, and I told Ben I had met a young man who was grateful for the advice to invest in dog bone because it had brought remarkable changes. The company owner planned to keep investing in the tavern, but the small staff gave him pause. A man and a young man sat at a table to discuss trade. Making salt popular in the market was a good strategy. They lowered the market price to do this. After the bandits were defeated, more traveling merchants arrived, and a wider variety of goods became available. As the country grew richer, people's demand rose quickly. The evening was entertaining, but the boy wanted to ask Ban about a rumor concerning rock salt, and Ban, surprised, said the salt did seem to exist as crystals mined from a mountain range. The guy rushed to please the man. Those unexplored lands really held a lot of that salt. The young man also mentioned the highlight, but it was the first time the merchant had heard of it. This is salt formed by boiling water from hot springs. If a mountain is full of caves, water streams run through it and you can collect salt there. Delighted by the idea of a new project, salt mining in Thighs, Ban was very interested in the new information, and despite fears it might fail, the merchant was determined to explore the lands himself. The man said a real treasure lay hidden in the country. He would not miss this chance. The young man observed that Ban clearly understood profitable projects. Noticing the man's enthusiasm, the boy took a card from his bag and placed it on the table, a duplicate map of the leader of the recently destroyed Bandit Alliance. The merchant was amazed by the discovery. The boy said it should stay secret. The map covered so much ground that the merchant thought of the poor knights who must fight often. The Bandit Alliance leader marked many unused caves on this map that explorers had made famous. The boy looked at Ban. Because people had already studied them, their chances of finding something worthwhile were better than if they searched blindly. The man was always amazed by the young man's resourcefulness, since they would have to handle everything themselves, and he knew Maya had good reason to recommend him. Even so, one important point remained. The man asked why the boy did not think that, with such valuable information, Ben would do something without telling him. The boy just grinned at the question, telling Ben he knew a man could make the right decisions. The man realized he could be a good partner for the new acquaintance. At the royal palace, everyone focused on the found book. King Marito appeared very interested in her. Nearby, Lord Ragdo reported what he knew. The young man who helped Lady Ratzel proved crucial to the mission, and the king was very pleased while Lord Ragdo was not. King Marito praised the bravery of the young man from another world, said he wanted to meet this outstanding youth, and showed strong personal interest in him. The lord said he would invite the boy to the award ceremony, and the king added that he must remember to order delicious alcohol. While in the woods, someone could hear Ban's enthusiastic cries, which were clearly taking all the fun out of the research. Exploring the map, they found a nearby cave. It seemed free of wild animals, so the young man planned to estimate the cost of a single study. The merchant insisted on going with him, saying it would be a good walk. The boy was surprised by the man's eagerness. The band's tendency to act without thinking was striking. The young man asked if he was used to this, and the man said he had once been a troublesome adventurer but settled down when he became a merchant and now lived quietly. The young man wondered why he kept meeting strange people, though Goss and Sarah were good too and not so flighty. They soon reached the right cave, where she hid in the tree branches, and as they descended the merchant noticed something. Bands realized they had hit a dead end. The cave ended sooner than they expected, but it was perfect for her to hide in. The boy already regretted that their research had begun with a failure, but the merchant didn't seem to care about the dead end. Ben briefly inspected the wall and concluded a barrier spell had been cast here. He said he'd encountered this before. Ben pulled out his instruments and asked the young man to hold the bag. Moments later, he struck the stone with all his strength, sending up clouds of dust that stunned the boy. The hammer was enchanted to deliver a tenfold blow, and he absorbed magical power as well. The boy was shocked when he realized he could not use something like that because of his background. Meanwhile, Banso saw a new passage. The merchant's eyes showed he had switched into adventure mode, taking the matter seriously. They moved forward, lighting the path with a torch. After a while, something made the boy stop. The cave opened into a bright area full of trees and green plants, like its own hidden forest. They no longer needed the torch. The merchant lowered it and looked around. Though the forest looked ordinary to the boy, he couldn't shake an uneasy feeling, while Ban was sure they'd found something amazing. Looking toward him, the boy saw the merchant sit by a tree with flowers glowing from its roots and realized where they were. This place felt like the Black Demon King's killer mountain. Ban was surprised by such a quick observation and mentioned the slime the young man had stumbled upon before. The slime terrified the young man because it was very hard to leave the mountain. The plants Ban found seemed out of place in an area with heightened magical energy, and they believed this mountain would be no exception in ties. Delighted, the merchant realized he could start a new business venture, and the young man was amazed at how he turned everything into a way to make money. What looked like a blunder at the start of the search suddenly turned into a success. It's a habit, but a useful one. The boy assumed there must be some medicinal plants here, but something interrupted him. Suddenly everything went blurry before my eyes. The merchant shouted to the young man, but he did not hear. Exhaustion overwhelmed him and his eyes closed, plunging his consciousness into darkness. After a while his senses slowly returned. Voices murmured nearby. It seemed others had noticed he was waking, but he still couldn't see anything. They asked him something, but he asked them to be quiet. He regained consciousness to find black-haired, pale-skinned people in front of him, and his hands tied behind his back. Partly immobilized, his hands tightly bound with rope, he felt a wave of panic as he realized he had been kidnapped, then looked at the kidnappers and saw striking features including black hair, red eyes, and obvious animal traits. The black-haired man stared at the kidnappers in shock, stunned to see they were half-human members of the beast race, and the same men pressed a weapon to his neck. The immobilized man asked what had happened. One of the half-humans then said only their tribe had black hair, so they concluded he must be from a demonic race. He denied it. Surprised that he understood their language, the half-humans remained wary and demanded to know who he was. Then the man said he meant no harm and wanted them to untie him, but the tribe did not understand him, and he realized he was in trouble again. He remembered Maya's words. The spirit spell lets the caster translate speech into a language they understand and memorize every word spoken to them. The wanderer understands every language he hears, but can only speak the common tongue, so he chooses the most fitting language. It helped him a little in this world. The men of the animal race moved in, threatening him and watching for his next move. They wanted to know if he understood their language. Someone then asked who the black-haired man was. It was Obaba, the tribe's elderly leader. Calm and steady, she saw the man as just a child. She had been told the men had found and caught him while hunting, but they had also noticed a second one who managed to escape. The man realized the band was hiding well. The tribesmen began explaining everything to Obaba. They realized the man could understand their language. For some reason, he understood them but could not speak it. Obaba stepped closer to the man to look at him. She raised her will and her palm, claws poised in front of the stranger's face. Shender stood, unsure what was happening as a stream of magic rushed toward the man. The wanderer asked what she had done with the host's spell. The beast race youths were stunned when he spoke their language. The village head gave him some of the tribe's magical energy, and he asked if it could affect his side effects, but that proved impossible. Smiling, the woman found the spell interesting but odd in its placement, and the man realized Maya had applied it in a hurry, leaving him with muscle pain. He assured the beast tribe he meant no harm and opened negotiations. Now that he could talk to them, he shouldn't have missed the chance to negotiate. Someone in the kingdom called out to Ilias, and Ragnar said the man who helped them catch the bandits should also join the awards ceremony for his help. Ilias already knew his abilities and achievements, so she understood why he was taking part in the ceremony. All she had to do now was tell him the news. When the girl accepted the man's task, Ragnar watched her in silence, making Ilias uneasy for a moment. She called to Ragnar. The man noticed the girl was calmer than the day before. Ragnar wanted to know what had happened. Ilias felt embarrassed and blushed. She said nothing had happened to her, which only amused Ragnar more. Ilias looked better than usual. Her claim that nothing had happened amused Ragnar even more, and Ilias looked better than usual. The man told Ilias Ratsalt to give the invitation to the guy and make sure he accepted it. The girl accepted the order, and Ragnar and Kargu smiled as she left. Kargu saw Ilias had changed for the better because of the man, but Ragnar refused to admit it, so Kargu admitted he'd like a granddaughter like Ilias, and Ragnar reminded him he was the girl's father, not her grandfather. Ban ran through the forest, gasping for breath. He saw a marked spot on the map and decided to return to help save the man, while in the beast race tribe, the wolf-eared youths were shocked by the news that the Demon King was gone. They were stunned to learn the Demon King was dead. Seeing their shock, the man decided not to tell them that a slime had killed the Demon King. Their tribe of black wolves moved to this forest long ago to escape the Black Demon King. Until now, they had lived quietly and lost contact with the outside world, which was neither enslaved nor destroyed. The village headman drank his tea with a quiet sadness. The young man from the beast race wanted to find his friend Ban, but the other man did not know where he was. Ban might come back to gather more allies, and he would not abandon someone in trouble. That did not mean the tribe would be attacked. Until then, the tribe had lived in peace without war. If they trust a colleague who has come back for help, they can negotiate safely with him. Baba realized the man could have told his friend about them if they had not untied him, and that friend would surely have doubted them. The man then asked to stay in their settlement for a while, and the woman agreed but asked him for a favor. Bobo asked the man to mediate between her tribe and the people outside the forest. The man was stunned by her request. She realized they should have left the settlement long ago. You can't live forever in this forgotten forest. Knowing both their language and the outsiders' language was a major success for the tribe. People in Tessasha would be interested in them, so he would serve as the tribe's mediator in negotiations. He decided to help them form new connections. The village head was pleased. Some tribesmen worried about her decision, but Obama trusted the man, saying he did not seem like a liar and they could trust him, while she saw right through him. The man woke up and found he had been unconscious for about an hour. A young tribal man apologized and the man calmed him. In return, he asked for a tour of their village. Their houses were simple but sturdy. They hunted in the forest for food. Although the forest sat on the mountain, they hunted animals. When there were too many animals, the tribe could attack the entire herd. Villagers watched the warriors train, impressed by their speed and strong armor. A villager looked on with admiration. They were stronger than the bandits. The tribe was not surprised, since these warriors had fought the Demon King's troops and training was part of their daily routine. A sudden sound came from a distance, and after moving forward a little, he saw a small group of children and asked his escort what they were doing. The man of the animal race warned him that if the guy was there, he would be cursed because it was the home of an unwanted child. A white-haired girl of the beast race stood before them, disheveled and looking innocent, while the man stared at her with wide eyes. The animal children kept standing by the girl's house, laughing loudly. A man woke and noticed them. He saw the children bullying the girl who was thought to be cursed. A frown crossed his face. He couldn't understand why they had treated the white-haired girl like this, nor could he understand why she was in such a squalid, abandoned place so far from the village. Smiling, the man said the girl's appearance made her unwanted and drove the children from the house as they might be cursed, while their laughter rang through the neighborhood. The man felt overshadowed by the scene. He knew what it was like to be in a girl's place because it was similar to what he experienced in Japan. Trying to calm down, he realized they knew nothing about it and had to find out from Obaba why everyone bullied the white-haired girl. Panic swept the palace when everyone learned the black-haired man had been captured by half-humans. Kargu ordered everyone to search for him. The man refused to tell Ragnar. Since it was Ilias's day off, Kargu hoped his acquaintance would be all right. Meanwhile, in the demi-human village, the man entered a house where a woman of the animal race waited for him. On a tour of the half-human village, the man became interested in a case and wanted to know why a girl was called an unwanted child. The woman pointed out the girl's appearance to him and called her cursed, saying white hair was a sign of annihilation and that the Black Wolf tribe should not have children who looked like that. Her mother left during childbirth, and her father never returned because of the huge beast. When the villagers abandoned her in the forest, the plants around her began to wither. Because she took lives, they got rid of her. She was very different from them, and their tribe didn't want to fall under her curse. The villagers kept the girl outside the village because they believed she would bring only misfortune, and the man was unhappy about it. They used her as a barrier against evil, and to them, this was the only way the cursed child could be useful in the village. When the woman spoke, the man grew angry and quietly left the room. Baba warned it was late, and she could not guarantee the man's safety outside the settlement. He replied gloomily that he'd be fine as long as he didn't try to leave. The magician wanted to examine the white-haired girl. She didn't care what he did. After a while, he arrived at the girl's broken shack. Her shelter was made of stapled boards and torn fabric. Seeing the man, the white-haired girl froze and hid. The stranger from another world tried to calm her, but she kept watching him, her whole body trembling. Curled into a frightened ball, she tried to hide and began making indistinct noises. The man saw this and realized she did not understand him. He stared at the poor exile in a daze after the bearer's spell was corrected. Understanding the speech of the Black Wolf tribe's demi-humans was necessary. The girl kept making indistinct noises as a shiver ran through her body. Her leg was shackled in heavy metal chains. Sadness showed in his eyes as he looked at it, realizing the girl simply didn't know the language, so he couldn't understand her. Trembling and sobbing, a blonde girl clutched a leg badly injured by iron shackles, living alone in fear since birth. A black-haired man watched the trembling girl trying to hide in her dilapidated, filthy shack, but the shackles on her leg kept her from doing so as her body shook with fear and panic. The wanderer could not understand why the girl was treated this way or forced to live such a terrible life, and the white-haired girl looked at him with tears in her eyes. The man's eyes filled with tears at her terrible appearance and the circumstances of her life. Unable to bear the sight, he moved in and hugged her tightly. The white-haired girl was surprised and kicked him without warning. In despair, the wanderer said she was lonely and scared from all she had endured in life, and those who forced her into this life had no right. The man shouted desperately about the girl's feelings. Alone, the girl may have wanted to protest to her fellow tribesmen, but could not ask for help. She did not understand him and looked at him in confusion. He believed it was unnatural for a child not to cry. The world had already dried the white-haired girl's tears, and the hero struggled to hold back his own. The man stared steadily at the confused girl. She could not understand his words. Society would not accept her. The wanderer decided to make her forget all the suffering she had endured. His priority is to make sure this never happens to her. He will do his best. If everything goes well, he will live a calm, peaceful life. The black-haired man sobbed desperately and vowed the girl would never again know the pain and grief of bullying. The white-haired half-girl watched him as his bitter tears chilled her for a moment. She sobbed convulsively in his arms. After a while, their sobbing stopped. The man relaxed and let go of the girl, apologized for letting her see him cry, and she shook her head to show she was fine. The wanderer turned to the girl of the beast race. Embarrassed, he realized she understood him and stared dumbfounded, because only moments before she had not understood a single word he had said. A man patted the girl on top of her head. Then he noticed her hair was glowing. Shocked, he stared at the girl's glowing hair. His presence instantly drew the girl's attention, and he wanted to know if she would leave her settlement, but she looked at him with innocent confusion, not fully understanding, and he waited for an answer from the white-haired girl. Someone suddenly touched him, and the unknown man told him to calm down. He recognized the voice as his familiar Ban. The man's ball was hidden under his clothes, and his face was wrapped in a ribbon. The sight scared him, and for a moment he thought it was not his friend. So the man had to remove the clothes covering his face. Seeing this, he sighed with relief. Relief washed over him as he realized Ben was okay. Ban said he had already called for reinforcements to the village. The man tried to hide, but he heard him crying. The guy realized in horror that Ban had heard him crying. For a moment he felt an uncomfortable sadness. Ban kept talking. Karagu Squad waited at the forest edge, and they should have run away anyway, but the man abandoned the plan. Brief, awkward sadness hit him, but the Karagiryu Justice Squad waited at the forest edge, so they should have run. He abandoned that plan, told Ban the locals wanted peace talks, and pointed out the white-haired girl, who was not there. When an unfamiliar man, appearing as part of a band, showed up, the white-haired girl was frightened and hid back in her shack, trembling as she stared at them. Trying to calm her, he was interrupted when Ban asked about the villagers, and although he assumed bandits knew them, that was not true, so he began to explain. After hearing the story, Ban broke into loud tears as everything sank in. Then the man asked for one favor, and another ran off with tears in his eyes to carry it out. The man watched the departing figure, unsure if his actions would pull him from a quiet life, but after careful thought he decided to save the girl himself. The white-haired girl grabbed his clothes, her gaze pure and innocent. For once the man was ready to temporarily set aside his usual thoughts and desires for a quiet life, and he told the girl he would save her. He wanted to give her freedom and will let her choose her own path without regrets, and staying calm was the best choice at the moment. Elsewhere in the kingdom, Ilias could not find her boyfriend. She checked all the places he usually stayed, but he was not there, so she felt depressed. Upset that her assignment would not be finished, she was approached by a tired messenger from the band who had been searching for Lady Ilias for a long time, and when she realized she could likely get information about the black-haired man from him, he agreed. Captured by the demi-humans, the man left the girl stunned when she learned, while he was in the Black Wolf tribe's village trying to add another condition to the negotiations. The village thought the other side wanted to change the negotiation terms, but that was not true. As decided, a food supply will be provided, and any additional accepted conditions will be compensated. Regarding negotiations, if they accept equal terms, the rest will be resolved quickly, and Baba believed that if they did not accept, they would attack their settlement. That was not the case. If they refuse equal terms, they will not receive delivery. This will determine the outcome of the negotiations. They will trust them only if they accept a single condition. The plan was to allow an unwanted child to leave the settlement. Residents were shocked, but Obama calmed them. The man had not mentioned it before, and they were happy to give him permission. Upset by her words, the man thought the girl had left for her own sake and that they were fine. Suddenly, a male beastman burst into the room, screaming and calling out to Obama. A man from the animal clan told the village leaders that armed people were at the settlement entrance. The woman turned to him in surprise, and soon everyone had gathered at the entrance. Obama and the residents looked wearily toward the man. The wanderer reassured them that the knights had come for him and said they should have kept negotiating. Then the man learned about their village's strongest warrior and told him he would fight the unwanted child. If the white-haired girl wins, she will be granted victory. Shocked to think he had been sent to eliminate the girl, the man stayed silent when no one objected and chose not to correct the mistake. The village decided he pitied the white-haired girl, but also despised her, so he challenged her to a duel to let them settle it between themselves. He merely smiled and did not try to correct her thoughts. The village head refused the condition. No one wanted to take on the girl's curse. The wanderer had to tell them his knights would begin fighting in earnest. Kargu and Ragdor stepped onto the field and faced each other with their weapons ready. Before long the battle began. Weapons rang through the village. Each blow landed with overwhelming force. Gusts of air swept across the field, and the villagers had to cover themselves. Kargu tried to attack Ragdor, but the gray-haired man struck the ground with a powerful hammer and stopped him, while the knights' battle continued, and gusts from their blows swept through the village, forcing residents to take cover and leaving some unable to withstand the force. After the man reported that the knights would not fight, few came. Residents should not look down on the troops shown to them. The woman was annoyed because she understood the danger of the situation. His actions left them no other way out. With no choice left, negotiations continued. The clear gap in strength meant there were no problems. Then the man looked at the white-haired girl and announced the knights would not interfere in the battle and would only ensure the village's strongest warrior accepts the duel. A blonde girl stood nervously among the tribesmen. A man approached and whispered something that made her panic. The girl looked increasingly worried as the man walked away calmly, and when Kargu asked about their last battle, the wanderer only smiled. He admired the fight. It was a strong performance. Thanks to the old man, they will be able to see something interesting. Kargu felt a little worried, but the man calmed him and said he could be relied on. The village head agreed and introduced them to the strongest young man, who must face the unwanted exile alone. She thought his condition was a curse that drained his life force, but he said nothing and wanted to start the fight immediately. The headman fell silent and ordered everyone to prepare for battle. The white-haired girl looked at the man with tears in her eyes. Her sword was ready, but she was scared. Then the man had to call out to Grandpa Hag. Kargu raised his weapon and aimed it at the man's throat. The girl became even more desperate. When the battle began, a young man from a village of half-humans shouted and rushed toward the white-haired exile, ready to strike, but his weapon shattered before it reached her. Everyone was stunned by what they saw. At the right moment, the dark-haired man shouted to the blonde girl to defeat her opponent. Although she had been scared by the battle, she pulled herself together and calmed down. The village exile took a fighting stance and readied herself to attack her opponent, crying as she clenched her fist. After that, the white-haired girl struck him so hard their village's strongest warrior was sent flying and crashed into a house. The residents were stunned when their strongest warrior was defeated by the exile, and then the man said his real goal was to make sure everyone heard the same thing. They hate the girl, but she is not a cursed child. Her white hair and distinctive eyes are caused by the genetic condition albinism. It is not a curse. Only 1 in 10,000 children show symptoms. The tragedy of losing her parents could happen to anyone. Terrified of the tragedy, the villagers invented a false curse, blaming an unwanted child, and in their ignorance committed a foolish act that became their sin. Even after he said it, some still won't believe him. The duel proved the girl's worth. The wanderer and the girl stood before the stunned residents. He continued speaking. A grove of translucent trees absorbed a lot of magic from the surroundings, so their leaves glowed. The man pointed to the girl's glowing hair. Understanding the language proved useful. Her magical energy penetrated and disrupted the bearer's spell. A terrifying amount of magic lurks inside her. A gloomy-faced man told the residents the girl had exceptional talent, like the hero who defeated the demon king. The child was not unwanted, but a savior. Heaven sent the Black Wolf tribe a child after years of living in fear of the demon king, and the residents were stunned by the news. Upon learning this, some fell to their knees, realizing what they had done to the girl. A man calmly told her he was taking her according to the contract, and they began to leave the village. The performer stunned the knights, and his words gave them goosebumps for a moment, but deep down he feared the villagers might rebel against them. Everything turned out well thanks to Ban. The man realized he could not match Ilias because she was so strong. The duel succeeded only because Ban showed how to release magic. She managed to overcome her fear of the village and to rid herself of another through her own efforts, and this experience will undoubtedly become her foundation. This was also for the good of the village. Belief in the supernatural and false information had trapped them in the forest, but now they can see their mistakes and regret them. Annoyed that they accused him of not convincing everyone, the guy remained inexperienced. Suddenly, a hag approached them. The gray-haired man stepped forward to speak to the girl, but she was afraid of him and hid behind the guy. Kargu, in tears, asked the man to resolve the misunderstanding between him and the girl. The performance with Kargu amazed everyone, and that made the girl wary of the man. Earlier, the girl had been excited, and the magic was on a completely different level, with 10,000 villagers afraid of her. So just before the duel began, the guy whispered that if she lost, he would be destroyed with her. Hearing this, the girl panicked. She then saw Kargu point his weapon at the man's neck. The wolf became even more frightened. Because of the villagers' fear, she became desperate for him. An amazing child, she was let down when he did not try to resolve the misunderstanding. Although his companion still seemed innocent, things were different now, and he found it hard to tell her the truth because he felt guilty. The wanderer decided that when he returned home he would look after her, making sure she was clean and well-fed, and he planned to speak with Ilias about where she would live. He suddenly noticed something and stared into the distance in awkward horror. The gloomy Ilias was not far from them. She grew angry, a gloomy aura surrounding her. With a malicious laugh, she saw they had already solved the problem, and when she smirked, everyone panicked. They were at a loss. The man remembered that Ilias had a day off, but the search took longer, so Ban could only call Ilias. When the knights learned the man was safe, they quietly spent the night in the cave while Ilias searched the forest all night. The girl grew angrier when she found out and let out an angry laugh that frightened the knights and the man even more. The hag pushed the man toward the girl. Shocked by his grandfather's actions, he calmed down, apologized to Ilias, and moved closer behind her. He hugged the girl tightly, thanking her for enduring the desperate, exhausting search. Ilias insisted she wasn't tired at all. Smiling knights watched as he kept talking and held Ilias close. Not understanding the whole situation, the girl was afraid for him. The wanderer took all the blame himself. He was glad she was so worried about him. Ilias blushed. She was also happy that he was fine. The knights were relieved the matter was settled. If Ilias had shown up earlier, they would have finished the case much sooner. Ban didn't think about that because he was sure Ilias wouldn't agree either. If Ilias were here, things would only get more complicated. Ilias heard the man's words and frowned immediately. This embarrassed the man. Inside, the man was yelling at the others. The man had just calmed Ilias, then they suddenly began talking about it, and he realized he would have to endure the girl's strength, which was still angry. The man denied everything, but the woman no longer believed him. She grabbed his waist, causing him pain. The white-haired girl watched with tears, and then Ilias hugged him tightly, hurting him. Ilias knocked the man out with a single blow. The man was a weak guest from a parallel world. After hearing the explanation, Ilias understood the whole situation. The case report was given to Kargan Band, and Ilias dragged the girl into the bathroom. Soon, a clean, attractive girl appeared in front of the man. He noticed she had become even more beautiful. The girl was frightened because of Ilias' actions. She jumped on the man while crying, and he could not withstand her pressure and fell. Ilias had a hard time because the girl refused to obey her, since the girl had previously bullied the man. At first, the man wanted to take the woman to Maya, and Ilias told him he was expected at the award ceremony for catching the robbers, but he refused to go. which upset Ilias and led her to grab him and keep him from leaving the house. The upset girl wanted to know why the guy refused, but her tight grip hurt his shoulder. When Ilias woke up, he released him. He told her it only mattered to knights and that he did not want to draw attention, and she should have understood that as cranks they attracted too many eyes. Because she had partners to support her, the girl could not pay attention to it. Ilias believed they could support each other too. He agreed that Cargo, Ban, and Ilias could support him, then told the girl to tone down her art a little, since he'd only been in this world a week and needed time to carefully work out how much and whom he could trust. Standing out would attract enemies, and he wanted to avoid that. It was just his frugal cowardice, and Ilya was stunned to hear about it. Recently, the man survived an attack by a bear and the slime. Ilias was reliable, but he lacked the courage to trust completely because he had just met a girl. The guy smiled and said Ilias was his most reliable person at the moment, then he refused to participate. Ilias said Ragdor had instructed her to do it, but she had taken the guy's opinion into account, and a moment later the guy agreed, which surprised the girl. Refusing would have hurt Ilias' prestige, so he agreed. She cared for him, and he really wants to thank her. Next, he accused her of not telling him right away. Then they went to Maya and soon arrived at the church, where Maya cast a spell on the white-haired girl. The girl cast a spell on her. Ilias then introduced herself and asked if the girl understood her speech. The girl did understand. The guy was not completely sure Maya had done everything without a mistake, but the girl was fine and did not have the muscle aches the guy had. She realized the girl's name was Ilias and now wanted her savior's name, and he realized he could come up with what she would call him. The name worked, but the girl could drop the formal suffixes. He was thinking when Maya suddenly suggested he tell her about the nickname Darling, but he ignored her. To help the girl learn to live independently, he agreed to support and take responsibility for her and asked that she call him master or teacher. After weighing her options, the girl chose to call him only master. He was pleased by the nickname. He asked Maya to teach the girl to keep her magic to herself, and the girl agreed. Next, he had to sort out clothes, food, and a place to live. Cyrus went to the church for that reason. The girl was delighted to see the pretty girl and hugged her. The man called Cyrus when she was free. Ilias was upset that the man knew Cyrus's address, but he defended himself, saying friends exchange addresses. The man asked Cyrus to make clothes for her, since half-human clothing was not sold in the city, and she had trained in that craft. Cyrus agreed to the man's request and went to the workshop with great enthusiasm. Now they had to teach the girl to speak. Maya's native speaker spell let her understand their language, but she still had a lot to do, and at this rate would not become independent. Their first task was to study the alphabet and the rules of society. Both the man and she relied on Maya, and she noted that he had taught her to call Maya master. He claimed to explain the laws of life, but the man was really an innovator in the study of speech and the orders of this world, so he asked Maya to help them, and Maya began to explain everything to them. Ilias grew bored watching. The man had diligently absorbed knowledge about this world, and Ilias started practicing out of boredom before she heard loud stomping. Cyrus came running. One girl made clothes for another girl. The man was surprised by her speed, but a moment later he was kicked out of the church. After a while he was allowed to enter. Cyrus appreciated the clothes. Those clothes were her masterpiece. She wore comfortable clothes, an off-the-shoulder t-shirt, short shorts, and long comfortable boots. Everyone liked her, and Cyrus, seeing her white hair, thought black would suit her. While one man liked the outfit but felt her legs were too exposed, so Sarah sewed fabric onto the shorts. The man was pleased with the clothes. Ilias praised Sayara, and she was thrilled. Her design matched the trend, but he didn't think she belonged in this world. Maya reported it too. She and the man agreed. He then asked Sarah to sew clothes for Ilias next time and wanted to see the outfits she would make for the man. After paying her for the job, Sarah felt embarrassed to accept such a large sum. The man paid not just for the materials but for her skill. Sarah worried because she wasn't in sales. He insisted on that and told her that if her hands shook at a large payment, she should have trained her skills more. Everyone was convinced of the girl's skill. She welcomed their comments, and the man admired Cyrus's skill, since in just a few hours she not only created the design, but also completed the look with shoes and accessories. They left the church and soon came to a well-known tavern. The girl smelled something pleasant and excited, went inside to find a lively crowd. The tavern owner noticed the man had brought a pretty girl, and the man asked the owner to bring them a drink. Ilias noticed more customers in the tavern, and the man agreed. Soon he would be thinking about the next step, how to make a sweet dish, but Ilias did not like his idea because she especially hated fruit. A minute later someone set a dish in front of the girl. The man asked her to repeat after him. She stared at him intently as he showed her how to eat with a spoon. Soon she understood the idea and put a spoon in her hand. Not used to it, her hand shook with the spoon. Still, she managed to taste the dish and liked it a lot. The others were amused by how much she enjoyed it. Before long, she asked for more. They stayed in the tavern until evening. The man praised Ilias for not being rowdy. The girl took offense. He explained the meaning of the word brawl to her and realized he had a lot to teach this child. Learning to fight was important too. At first, she had to learn how to live. This helps a child who does not know letters or words learn to live independently. Then the man called to Ilias. Ilias thought about one thing for a long time. This is about the girl's name. In the village, she was only called the cursed child. Ilias wanted to know what black and white were called in his native language, but those words did not fit her name. Ilias recognized the word wolf in his native language. To her, wolf sounded beautiful even though it was a man's name, so they had to change it to wolf. The name felt strong yet soft and light. It sounded pleasant, and the man liked it. Then he told the girl that from that day on she would be called Uffy. Curious, she repeated the name and showed her pleasure with a bright smile. The company was glad to see Ulfa, and they soon found themselves near Ilias' house. When the man told Ulfa the house would be hers from that day, she looked at him with admiration, gathered her strength, ran to the house, and joyfully entered her new home. From that day, the child named Ulfa began a new life that they both enjoyed. Meanwhile, the king learned there was a tribe of demi-humans living in the territory of these that people had not suspected. A lot had happened during the man's stay in this world. Merito learned the man had accepted the invitation to the ceremony and knew he would bring change to the country. The king looked out the window and said his heart was pounding at the thought of meeting a beautiful aristocratic girl, and Ragudo knew the king was joking while the man climbed the stairs. Ulface was developing rapidly, planning to handle everything. He wasn't sure how far to go. Ilias was probably unhappy that he couldn't fully trust her. The girl was sensitive to others' judgments and kept the stress inside. The man thought Ilias' strength was unique and avoided taking direct action. He pushed the thought aside. Because of the oath incident, their dealings with the opponents would change, and that prospect did not please him. He forced himself to calm and sort his thoughts, listening to his heartbeat as he tried to steady himself. Calm returned because, as always, he would be in this place. For the award ceremony, the man asked John to find clothes for him. After putting on an outfit, he went out among the people. John liked the clothes because they suited him. Ulf noticed her master looked different. The man felt uncomfortable in the clothes. He had the appearance of a medieval aristocrat. Stepping outside, he noticed the carriage approaching. Kargu came to them. As usual, he put on his armor. Those were unusual. The man assumed the armor was made for the ceremony, but it was not, and Haig had to work hard to polish it. The country put Ian in charge of trade between the demi-human tribe and the Az, so merchants now have to bargain through him. For mediating negotiations with the demi-humans, the man would receive a few % of the net profit from future trade with the tribe, and they soon arrived at the palace. Because of this, the man was no longer unemployed. The ceremony was about to begin. Suddenly, a man heard unpleasant rumors about a girl. It turned out the nobles disliked the king's subjects. They believed the girl did not know her place. Then there was a sudden silence as the king arrived. The man saw King Li die for the first time. King Li looked young for his status. Suddenly, the man felt the king's gaze on him. The award ceremony began, and squads of knights were summoned. The man stood lost in thought under the king's gaze, telling himself he must be imagining it. Finally, they called the name Ilya. The king thanked her for her bravery in defeating the bandits. The hall applauded. The ceremony ended, and the buffet began, with the banquet hall filled with tables of various foods that the guy enjoyed, while Ilias spotted a guy's silhouette in the crowd. After finishing her business, the girl told the man that Ragudo wanted to meet him, and he later saw Ragudo with the king. Noticing him, the man introduced himself. He gave his name as Salvat Ragudo. He thanked me for looking after a squad. However, the man denied it. Suddenly, the king interrupted their conversation. Marito was a king. He then noted that although Ilias was a brave but inexperienced woman, he could make her important. The king awaited the man's reaction to his words. According to the report, the stranger had dark hair and dark eyes. Marito had heard about his relationship with Ilias, and now he wanted to ask him for a handshake. Having already told his subordinates not to interfere, the king only wanted to learn the wanderer's identity and next move, but the wanderer simply turned away, went to the buffet table, filled a plate, and offered it to the king to taste, making the king tense. Morito thought the guy interpreted the handshake as a request for food, but the guy gave the king fruits that were hard to peel, and after the king ate them, he looked back at the guy, who then headed for the banquet hall exit, leaving Morito staring in surprise. Shocked, he watched the black-haired man walk away without paying attention to him. The king froze in surprise for a moment, then immediately followed the man, because after finally meeting him, Morito had already prepared many ways to evaluate it, and he did not want it to end so quickly. Meanwhile, the man watched the fleeing king with a satisfied grin. Mardo was stunned and stared at the wanderer with wide eyes. The man knew the king wanted to play a little game with him, but did not expect the king to follow, and Marito realized the king was checking on him. The king laughed and apologized for his curiosity. At that moment, Ilias and Ragudo burst in on them. The man told the girl that her acting was terrible. The king laughed louder, pleased with the man he had borrowed from Ilias, and they soon found themselves in the king's study, where Marito smiled and said they could speak to him without ceremony, and the situation quickly escalated. The king thanked the man, and because the knights stuck to chivalry, the bandits used that to their advantage. Surprised by the king's casual manner, the man heard Ragudo say not to worry, that was their king. He then pointed out that luck was on their side at that moment. But the king believed that only the guy's wisdom let the knights get information from the bandits, and Rachel was able to defeat the bandit leader. But the man noticed the guy was not proud, because the guy believed exploiting people's weaknesses was not something to be proud of. He noted it would have been better if the king had praised Ilias, who, despite her ideal of following the knightly path like her father, was ready to face the consequences. Ilias accepted the man's offers as well. The man thanked the king for his attitude toward the Black Wolf tribe, and for ensuring they were treated equally, even though his country's strength would have allowed him to easily subdue and control them. The king laughed when he heard the man's words. Smiling, he said such dangerous matters were not worth discussing. Discussing them could damage his reputation as a wise king. After the king's action, the man looked awkward and behaved like someone under severe stress, while the king enjoyed hearing stories from the man's world but wanted to end something first, and the man gave a signal to his subordinates. Next, the knight pulled a battered notebook from his chest, labeled Sample IV, Studies of the Blue Demon Lord. The man raised the topic the guy wanted most to avoid, but it was important to them. The king knew the book used the language of the guy's world. The guy did not read it. This would put him in danger. If Grandpa Cargu had read it, he would have become an accomplice, and the man did not want that. The king understood this. In this world, research into resurrection magic was forbidden by an intercontinental agreement. If this country had a strict taboo like Mijam, they'd be searching the whole nation for a man to eliminate. He frowned at that. Even without reading it, it would have been erased, and if he had read it, he would have been destroyed on the spot. Meji's territory suffered the worst damage from the Demon Lord, leaving many areas as barren wastelands, so people there are very sensitive to questions about the Demon Lord. Also, the bandits' Dokla leader had been used by Magi's as a destroyer, and the black-haired man was stunned by this. It all sounded suspicious. If the book really contained research, it would be a worldwide problem. He did not want to be involved. That is why the king wanted him to analyze the book. The king promised to keep him safe. After all, it mattered too much to them. The man wanted to know how much information the book contained. Only the king and Ragudo knew about the book. Yugura and Maya were not told. Sir Yugura's sacred place is in Magi's. Maya is also given the highest responsibility in Thighs. When they finish their assignment, they can return to headquarters to do research. They probably knew the book existed. The man was shocked by the news, but he shouldn't have been so upset because Maya wasn't a secret agent. Even if he trusts her, he should not trust the people behind Maya and Yuger. Meji did not report anything about this book. The king feared the man might tell Rachel about it. The king decided not to tell Ilias about it. Ilias' mom was Maya's best friend. If the man tells her, she will most likely consult Maya about it. That's why the king wanted to find out whether the book was dangerous. The man wasn't thought of. He calmed down and asked what the king wanted from him. The man wanted him to translate the book into the world's language. A handwritten translation would be dangerous. Instead, the book's information would be stored in the king's mind. From now on, the king wants the man to visit the castle regularly to translate the book for him, and the man has already chosen the title, consultant, for the person who will help them avoid suspicion. Serving as a minister, he will advise the king about his world, while everyone else sees him as a court jester. The wanderer was not particularly happy about the title, but in the end information about his world might be useful to them. A simple citizen, he had no special knowledge. The king did not expect useful information, and only wanted to hear the wanderer for pleasure. The guy accepted the king's decision, but one thing bothered him because he wanted the king to make some arrangements. After a while of explanation, the man thoughtfully accepted the guy's terms, which were not complicated, and the wanderer thanked the man before presenting his palm to the king. After that, they shook hands. Ragdor noticed the king enjoyed the man's company and thought it could lead to a long-term business relationship. He proved far more interesting than the man had expected. Next, he pointed out the man's tone while talking to him. Recalling his king's casual tone, Ragdor wanted to laugh. The king decided to always speak to the man in private like that. It would be a time when he could rest and relax. The man told himself he wanted this person for himself, not just as someone cooperating with them, but also to serve their country. The royal drank his drink and clearly wanted this man as a subordinate. Meanwhile, Ilias headed home and soon entered her house in a strange way. A breathtaking view opened before her, and a man and a woman greeted her with food in their hands, thanking Ilias for his good work and saying they wanted to celebrate even though their preparations were not yet finished. Despite the unexpected talk with the king, Ilias was the main character that day. The girl stared, dumbfounded, at a table piled with food. Prejudice against Ilias will probably never go away, so the man wanted to congratulate her on behalf of everyone there. A speech of thanks was then given in the house, directed to the girl. Meanwhile, in a dark room, a faint glow of dark energy was the only light. The demon asked his subordinate if they had found the recording. They had not found it yet. They had searched all the places he used. Only one thing could explain it. Someone had already taken them. The demon's subordinates were monitoring these borders to prevent the book from being taken abroad, and they had sent intelligence agents to search for her. They would find the records sooner or later, so they had to hurry. If the book leaked to the public, they would be in big trouble. If they discover a demon, the relationship will end. He will become a burden and the demon will stop guiding him. The man with the mole by his eye thanked the red demon lord for his advice. Using stones, he built a small fire and set the food to cook. Soon the meal was ready. Time had flown, and it had been 10 months since he arrived in this world. He was about to start breakfast when someone called his name, Shisho. Ulfi was there. The girl greeted him cheerfully. Everything was a lie. He had only been in this world for 2 weeks. Turning to the white-haired girl, he quickly learned she no longer needed magic to speak to others. She knew only simple words, but she could already use the language of this world. The girl picked up a few Japanese words. Itadakimasu, the phrase said before eating, was one of them. The man kept relying on Maya to master magic since he could not learn this world's language. At that moment, a sleepy Ilias came down to them. Ulfi greeted the girl. The guy thought Ilya would be cheerful even in the morning. She was sleepy because she still wore armor even at home. She needed to pay more attention to her public image. At the very least, she should have returned the greeting with a smile, but she walked on with a frown. Convinced she could not learn to smile naturally, she was shocked when the guy showed her his smile. After a while, the company went outside. Ulf was getting used to people's suspicious looks. With a little more confidence, she could approach a popular animal race girl in the area. The country issued an official statement recognizing the demi-humans in TSA territory. Over the past few days, he had seen several half-humans from the Black Wolf tribe near the city. The company wanted to enter the palace. A man got a pass from Regudo for that. The pass allowed them to meet Regudo or Marito without any formalities. They soon found themselves in King Marito's office, where he greeted them while busy filling out documents. They needed somewhere to sit, so while Marito finishes his paperwork, he finds a place for them so they don't get bored waiting. The guy felt like a blissful court jester, but then Ulfi heard weapons clanking in the distance, so it was time to train, and the girl, determined to defeat the hag, rushed to the training area at lightning speed. The man felt like a blissful court jester. Alpha suddenly heard the sound of weapons clanking in the distance, and knowing it was time to practice, the girl ran to the training area to defeat the hag. At the same time, the king finished filling out the documents. The man wanted students to be able to choose what to study at school. To do this, he chose several candidates. The king's effort to raise educational standards drew little support because children were trained to be useful workers. The king appreciated the ideas from the man's world. The king couldn't imagine there were more than 7 billion people in the world. Right now, the man was answering Marito's questions about that world. He answered questions about political norms in the state of the population. They then discussed the reason for this and decided to use this policy in Theo's. Even if politics was effective in his world, it might not be in others. The country must choose between a hereditary monarchy and a democratic electoral system, and the main issue is which one suits the country best. Next, the king wanted to learn about their cultural development, specifically their cooking appliances. Previously, the man explained the rice cooker and the microwave oven to him. He showed the sketch to the king. The device would be useful if they could make it with magic. The problem was understanding how it worked. Realizing this, the king knew they had to find an experienced magician he could trust. A loud clang of weapons drew his attention. Marito laughed and took a break. They moved to the window to watch the workout. Oph fought Ragdor and easily bounced off the huge hammer. Attacking the man with various weapons in response, she still could not land a single blow on Ragudo's team, while the king watched her grow at a terrifying rate. Experience and skill won out here. He turned to Ilias. Ilias was on a completely different level. Not only was she skilled in combat, she also had an enormous amount of magical power. Her body-strengthening magic was unique. She could deflect a spear with her body. She was more than a gorilla, she was a magical metal gorilla. Ilias noticed their stare. She gave the man a gloomy look. The king invited the man to join them, but Ilias spoke to him in a way he could not understand. Ulfa could see that the man did not have those powers. Hearing this, Marito laughed. Then he offered Regulo to him. The king could also keep him company because Regulo was a man of many talents, but the man refused. Then Marito remembered that Maya had asked him for something. She wanted to borrow some knights to serve as guides to the villages of the TSA kingdom. Therefore, the king decided the man would also go with them. A messenger will arrive from the Ugra church headquarters to inspect its branches. They will check the churches in every village. Marito chose the guides Karga and Ilias. The king wanted the man to use the chance to visit the villages. The man was impressed that the wanderer noticed the difference between their world and his own. The best option was to send him to investigate. He didn't have to worry about everything. The king had already said the department's candidate would arrive for training. The man was glad he wasn't being called a court jester. They left the palace shortly after. Evening fell. The man, freshly bathed, went to the gym. Ilias was busy with his weapons. The girl tried to clean her sword with a cloth. Ulf had already fallen asleep. She wanted to say good night to the man, but did not wait for him. He was glad Ulf had a busy day. Then Ilias invited him to join them for training, and Marito repeated the offer, so he was not particularly happy with it. Ilias could not get used to the stranger addressing the king without any honors. The king himself had told him to use his first name. In front of the others, he would still have to watch what he said. Then the man fell silent and stared at the girl. He told her Morito had arranged a place for him to live. Needing to visit the castle every day, he decided moving closer was the best choice. The girl drooped for a moment, tried not to show her sadness, and then he told her he had refused the king's offer. Then he asked her permission to stay in the house. She was stunned and wanted to know why he refused. The first reason was Ulfa, since the girl had grown attached to Ilias, and the second was that he was still getting used to this world. He still felt anxious about living in this country. The girl stared at him, dumbfounded, and he frowned. An awkward silence filled the room. The guy walked out of the room awkwardly. Ilias wanted to find out what he meant, but he stopped her. The girl could interpret it however she wanted. Ilias felt confused. In her mind, the guy wanted to rely on her. She blushed and tried to calm herself down. Locked in his room, the man cited Alpha as one reason for refusing and felt a little ashamed. Afraid of sentimental thoughts, he returned to the house and saw Ilias. Seeing Ilias made him think that such a life was good. Outwardly an adult, he was still immature and relied on others. Like in Japan, he should have been able to live normally on his own in this world. Now, facing a dangerous situation, his heart felt like it would burst. He convinced himself it would be a good experience. It was only a matter of time before Ilias would play a big role in his life. She gave him advice, opportunities, and a place to live. Ilias gave him a foothold so he could get used to this world. He can't even thank her because he's immature. Compared with his world, this one was less comfortable but had advantages. Most people here lived honestly, even the bandits. After he got the information from them, Cargo told him the robbers were destroyed when the cola was liquidated. One of the robbers told him he was now calm about his destruction, and he thanked the robber for that. People in this world lived their lives sincerely. It was easy to be around innocent, pure-hearted people. Choosing a quiet life freed him from negative emotions and made him feel like he was living in the countryside. He wanted to find a way back to his world, but did not ignore the chance he might have to stay here. A quiet life was all that mattered to him. The next day they were near the church, and Ulf happily announced she was ready. Maya did not expect the man to be the candidate. He told her it was a sham. The king told him to broaden his knowledge. Yufei will join him on this path. The man asked about the church's messenger. A voice immediately announced the messenger's arrival. An attractive young woman named Lacra Self greeted the candidate and wished him success in their cooperation. A man met a woman and wanted to know her name. She suddenly took his hand, blushed, and introduced herself as Lacquer. Lucra noticed the man's odd appearance, black hair, dark eyes, and only a little magical energy. The girl wanted to know where the man was from. He said he was a wanderer. Those years were the first time he settled on the continent, and born with little magical power, he was not good at physical labor either, and suddenly the girl noticed something. She saw the man was accompanied by a spirit caused by Maya's possession technique, and then he changed the subject to the Black Wolf tribe. When Blackro saw Ulfi, she realized Ulfi was from there. The man told her that Ulfi already knew their language well, but to communicate with other members of the Black Wolf tribe, he uses that technique. Then the man said a friend had discovered the village, and he was only helping him, which amazed the girl. Blushing, she noticed the young man was very diligent. The wanderer returned the compliment and praised La Crya. With a fake smile, he said he was flattered to work with her. Lekrog giggled at his words. The smiling man still felt the other girl's gloomy stares. Ilias interrupted their conversation. The girl wanted to take Lekro somewhere else. After Lekro and Ilias walked away, Maya came up to him, admired his cleverness, and he kept his past and background to himself before asking if she had noticed anything odd in his speech. She did not sense any lies in his words. She was right because he had not lied. Lakra, like Maya, is the spiritual face of the Ugura religion. He suspected Lakra could also detect lies. They detect magic more easily than others, and likely notice shifts in magical energy that reveal lies. Seeing every secret in the heart was their advantage. The gloomy man was thinking about their method. No doubt when he found himself in this world, he settled in thighs, and with Maya's technique, you can also talk to the Black Wolf tribe by guiding and looping truthful wording so even Maya and the others do not notice the trick. Maya realized the man had prepared his answers ahead of time. He expected those questions, and because he was hiding even the smallest secret from her, he did not want his method to arouse suspicion. To change the subject, the man sincerely praised Lakra's beauty, and Maya immediately frowned. After a while, they were already in the carriage. They moved farther from the capital of Tais, as Wolfie sat happily on the wagon roof, enjoying the warm breeze, and Cargo drove the cart. Inside the cart, people studied the map. After a while, the wind picked up. Ulfie had to hold onto the wagon's fabric to keep from being blown away. They soon reached their destination. A calm, blessed silence greeted them. Lacroix and Cargo were talking with the village headman. The man surveying the area noticed residents used cranes to get water, which meant they had running water. It depended on the location. Supplying even one village with enough water was difficult. He then spotted a watchtower near the village, and Ilias said it was built to guard against monsters, which shocked him. The black-haired man felt a little scared when monsters were mentioned, since in this world monsters existed alongside demons. The man had never seen them before. Ilias explained the monsters came from another world. They had once been ruled by demon kings. They threatened regions rich in magic. There was also an otherworldly realm in Thais. The entrance was close to the mountain belonging to the Black Demon King's destroyer. The man heard this and realized it was the slug's nickname. Cargu said a wyver sometimes left the mountain. Most magical creatures that came there were controlled by that slime. Cargo heard the man's story and felt very lucky that day. The hag's tale explained why wyverns began appearing here, and Tom had few enemies left after the Demon King was destroyed. After a while, they got back into the carriage and set off on their way. Lekro was overjoyed. They had just had a successful inspection. The girl thought about the award from Ujer's main religious administration. The Yuga religion is named for the hero who saved the world. Demons born of resurrection magic threatened the world. The hero enlisted divine help to defeat them. Yuga's teachings are the hero's instructions for future generations. The sacred site stood in Midges, a monarchy where the Pope holds real power. The King of Majest negotiates with him and tells the people the news because that is his role. Medes did not forgive anyone who violated the taboos. Ugurianism was directly involved. The devil, a puppet of the mages, and the taboo book are all linked to Ugurianism. The people who drove Dukalu were Ugurians. He realized the situation was getting increasingly dangerous. After a while, they reached another village. Ulfie scanned the village carefully. She told her master with great enthusiasm that the cows in this village were smaller than those in the previous village, and he started joking about them. They explored the villages, and after the inspection, they moved on. Evening fell, and it grew too dark to continue the trip. So the company stopped at villages along the way, spent the night in the village church, and the village head lured the hag to his house, showing that the gray-haired man was very popular in those remote villages. The nuns showed everyone to their rooms. The man entered his room where he would spend the night. Then he wanted to sort through the documents to find a candidate for secretary. The man was absorbed in paperwork and focused on filling out the document. Suddenly, someone knocked on his door. He let me into his room without being asked. It was Lacra. The girl apologized to him for coming so late. Unable to sleep, she took a short walk and then noticed the light was still on in his room. He was stunned by the girl's appearance. Her clothes were not overly revealing, but her kala highlighted the curves of her body, and a low-cut neckline made her look very seductive. He immediately calmed down and said in a steady voice that he was just finishing his paperwork. She appreciated his diligence and asked to see the documents. He did not refuse. She was surprised he had written down every tiny detail, and he explained that beginners need to record all the circumstances so they don't miss anything important. LeCroix paused, then in a seductive voice she said, "With a reliable secretary like him around, people can stay calm." Laughing at her words, he was about to thank Lacra when she suddenly threw her whole body onto him, turned his head toward her, and made him look at her. The wanderer panicked over the situation. The girl gently stroked his face while Lacrosse sat fully on the man's lap. She then said she had actually come for advice. The inspection served another purpose. Her hand caressed his body. Grabbing his chin, she looked at him earnestly. She then told me she was looking for a book and asked where the one about the resurrection technique was, and the man immediately frowned. Suddenly he stood and walked to the window. The man leaned against the wall and let out a long sigh. Lacroix looked at him with a worried, confused expression. The man knew everything. He and the king had assumed from the start that Laker's goal was to find what was left behind. This was the first time anything like this had happened to him since he arrived in this world. Lacra's impatience startled him, and he was upset that the girl had changed the subject to the book too quickly. He told Lacrae that outright. She froze when she heard it because it meant her seduction magic had failed. The man agreed, saying he had only been tempted by her actions and outfit, and she immediately blushed. Embarrassed and in tears, she wanted him to forget everything that had happened, and he had no intention of doing that, but he was glad she had. Even more embarrassed, Lacra had tears on her cheeks and couldn't understand why her magic didn't work, so she forced herself to pull together and carry on despite the shame. The man thought her seduction magic was superimposed on the opponent's head, and Lacra agreed. By locking eyes, the enchantment penetrated the opponent's magical powers and influenced them. The secretary explained that he had little magic for that, so her seductive charms could not affect him. As a low-level magician in this world, he was happy at first, but most healing magic did not work on him, so he realized his situation was not so good. Lacroix eagerly asked the secretary to pour her magic power directly into him, and she immediately blushed at the thought. The man suggested she seduce him, but she refused and left him disappointed. Lacrae sadly had to accept that she had not completed the task. After that, they put all the facts together. To prevent the Demon King's return, the Agura General Directorate classifies all documents related to Taboo and the Demon King. Until then, as Medj's puppet, he stole a book called Sample 4, Studies of the Blue Demon Lord. My art requested documents about a one-armed man who can control resurrected people, and they discovered there had been a previous tease. Unable to find the book, they grew suspicious of Maya and secretly sent a capable nurse to investigate. The girl talked excitedly about her skills, saying she could use high-level magic and was an exorcism expert, but her recent failure was especially ridiculous for a guy. Lucra felt confused and defended herself, saying she had treated him well, but she had put herself in that position by acting too quickly. This knowledge overwhelmed Lakar. She had messed up her covert mission. The man told her she only needed to gather information openly. She had an explanatory note from the main department. Maya could not have hidden the book because her activities would have been suspended. The girl understood everything, and the guy was ready for bed when a crying Lacra stopped him, believing he would help her. When a man asked her about seduction, Lacra tried to make him forget it and soften him up, but he remained unapproachable and still agreed to help the girl. Tired of the girl's company, the wanderer refused to share any information about the book. Suddenly Lecra asked him about it, so he asked Lecria how the book looked. The girl described it, and he said he had never read such a book in thighs. He pretended to ask about the book Lacrosse said contained magical powers. If you put up a barrier, those powers will appear. That was why she put up barriers in the village churches. Lacroix was surprised by the man's words. The man then explained that Alfie had told him about it. Lacra remained calm about it. The barrier harmed no one, and if the barrier's magic in the book came into contact, she would feel the resonance even from a great distance. Her plan was to set up barriers all over the Thai's country. The man asked her about permission to put up barriers. Lacra wanted his help getting it, but he was only a candidate for secretary. He lacked those rights and could only consult with the king. Lacrae had had enough. The man said the girl needed to be more responsible. Seeing his magic, Lacrata thought she could handle him. Annoyed, the man teamed up with her, and she noticed he began speaking to her without respect. Though she was older, he didn't care. In Medj, at Uyghur's main sanctuary, Pope Upero sat opposite Archbishop Ukka. Ukka sent Lacrat to return the book, and Dad remembered that the girl had already mastered the magic of exorcism at such a young age, her achievements undeniable. Despite being good at a few things, she was completely incompetent at many others. Papa Yukaro could not understand why she was chosen. Akka laughed and said that if they appointed an inspector as absent-minded as Lacra, Maya would drop her guard. The archbishop secretly sent another person. The gray-haired man had already sent me Jesus' subordinates there. As long as Lacrae is clumsy in public, their capable subordinates will be able to get hold of the book. That was their brilliant plan. If the plan had been clever, there would have been no comments. They should have avoided actions that could damage their relationship with Thighs. Yuka was relaxed. After the conversation, the humming man left, confident his plan was perfect. When his pendant lit up, he realized it was a report from Lacra and slipped away to an empty spot to hide. Yuka was shocked to learn Lacra had told the secretarial candidate everything, and as someone approached him, Lacra said the man would help her search for the book. The gray-haired archbishop then calmed down. The archbishop was glad the girl had gained a worthy ally. The man with the mole under his eye grinned at their conversation. He called to Archbishop Uku and asked about Lacra's message. The white-haired man looked surprised to see the priest. He suddenly fell under the man's spell and told him about Lacra. Progress was unexpectedly promising. Even better than his trained subordinates, Lacra might find the book faster than them. The man frowned at his words. Success was their goal. The priest approached the archbishop, handed him the document, and asked permission to bring in more helpers. The archbishop calmly accepted the document and signed it. Once the permit was signed, the priest left the premises. It was possible someone remained under the man's spell. When he left the room, the spell lifted from the archbishop. Yuka could only stare blankly out the window. The man could not recall the recent meeting with the priest. Soon the man arrived at the palace. In the study, the man explained to King Marito what had happened. The man was pleased with the report. They carried out a thorough inspection. By chance, the man began working with Lacra, and the king approved, so they should have used it. The wanderer rose from the sofa. He told the king Lacra was too distracted, so it made sense to send someone else to investigate instead of her. Merchants and adventurers might be hiring mages as mercenaries. The black-haired man asked King Marito about that book and what he planned to do with her, and the king said time was running out, so they needed to start deciphering it immediately. The man sat on a rock, lost in thought, so I didn't pay much attention to others, while Ulfi and Lacroix are trying to sort out the magic items, and Ilias was with them for company. Lacroix soon approached the man. She said she had finished the preparations. I wanted to know what to do next. The man was stunned by her question and assumed she was asking about the book. He then reported that he had permission to install a barrier outside the castle, so Lacroix could start at the gate and gradually extend it along the walls until the city was encircled. This will buy them time against Lacra. You can only help this way to keep the book from being found. The man feared that someone else besides Lacra had been sent to look for the book. He should have been on his guard. Ulf and Ilias watched the man with Lacra. That night they noticed how close the two had become. Ulf told her the man was thoughtful, like when he took her from the village. Ilias assumed Lacra was lost in thought. But Lacra was not thinking about anything, and Ilias felt briefly embarrassed by that. He also told Lacrae to explore the Dokulu cave he used as a base, and then asked about her ability to fight monsters. Lacroix was confident in her skills, but the man did not believe her, so she had to prove herself. At that moment, a cube-shaped barrier formed above her. It was lacquer used as a defense. Weak attacks won't even scratch this shield. Then the man ordered Ulfa to strike the barrier with full force. White-haired Ulfa moved toward Lacrae and struck the barrier with all her strength. When the dust cleared, Ulfa saw the barrier still intact and unmarked. She couldn't even scratch it. Lacroix felt proud of her strength. Ulfa was upset because her arm ached from hitting the barrier. The man tried to calm her down. At that moment, Ilias approached them. The girl also wanted to test the strength of Lacra's shield, and Lacra didn't mind that. Ilias, reacting to Ulf's attack, put more force into her strike. Ilias struck Lacra's barrier with her sword, and the force of the blow partially broke it, causing cracks. Lacra was stunned when the blow's enormous force sent Ulfa a short distance away, and Ilias realized the barrier was so strong Ulfa would struggle to break it without much more effort. Lacroix proved his strength with it. Ilias didn't count, but no man could break her barrier. The wanderer quietly picked up the stone from the ground. Using a shovel, he dug a shallow hole in the ground. He then threw the dirt at the girl's barrier. Lacra looked up. A cluster of insects clung to the top of the E-barrier. The girl recoiled in horror. Now she won't be able to get out of the barrier because Lacra can't move it. Ilias were often amazed by the guy's actions. The man asked Lacra to reshape the barrier, but she couldn't, and when he asked if he could blow bugs away with wind magic, Lacra couldn't do that while also holding the barrier. He sighed and warned that attacking the enemy with poisonous vapor would get her into trouble. Lacra grew desperate. She needed help clearing the insects from the barrier's roof. Ilya used wind magic to sweep them away. Lacra was free now. The girl was upset by the man's cruelty. He did not consider himself guilty because he had only pointed out her weak spot. Ilias and Ulfa were startled by his words. As evening fell, a hooded man calmly walked down the alley toward their destination. When he reached the wall, he used magic to pass through it and enter the room. The room was simple and tidy, but the man paid it no mind. He touched the magic ball while his master waited for a report. He said Lacra and another man had put a barrier around the castle walls and gates, and that she had also checked the base. The master realized the girl had indeed met a diligent ally. The man waited for further instructions. Then the priest with the mole under his eye asked for more details. Their main goal was to locate the book. The priest's subordinate told him Lacra's ally looked strange. Black hair and dark eyes marked the man, and there was no hint of magic. The priest realized the man looked demonic, which was alarming given their situation. The man reported that the other man was connected to Elias. The priest told his subordinate to stay very vigilant. The priest sent more comrades to the subordinate. They were to join forces and be ready. The man accepted his master's instructions. A long-haired priest stood in the study, his palm resting on the magic ball as he considered his next move. The Pope scolded the archbishop, saying that when cooperating with another country, they must explain the reasons and circumstances, or their actions could harm relations. The Pope ordered Uke to contact King Theus, told the gray-haired man to recall the mercenaries he had sent, and the archbishop accepted the Pope's instructions. Look, I should have contacted Lacra and the mercenaries, but when the mercenaries were mentioned, the man realized he did not know who they were. A voice called out to him. Yuka was happy to see his friend. The man refused to listen to the old man's speech, and in a gloomy voice he put the archbishop back under his spell, thereby ordering Yuke to hand over the mercenary problem to him, while Yuka will focus only on Lacra. In the capital, a man walked down an alley and met his friend, smiling as he greeted Gadsden, while the old man showed no surprise at his arrival. Gadsden had no home in Theas. In short, he was homeless. Because he wandered the city, Gadsden knew about everything going on. He wanted to know when strangers arrived in the city. Treating him to a drink can yield useful information. Sometimes the man finished her off that way. Gadsden reported no changes in the city. The old man thanked him for the tasty drink. A man sat next to Gadsden and warned him about dangerous people appearing, but the old man did not believe him. The wanderer did not want Gadsden to get into a dangerous situation, then threw him a coin. Gadsden gladly accepted the coin and began to pack up, confident he had exactly what he wanted, and he would keep listening to the guy's chatter until the money ran out because the guy wanted to know the old man's wishes. The man with big hair said he worked in farming. He used the guy's money to farm. If the harvest was good, Gadsden wanted to share it with him. The man smiled when he heard that and looked forward to it. Gadsden then said goodbye. The next morning, an urgent message arrived from La Crosse. Medj told her to explain the full circumstances to the King of Thies. To win support in the search for the book, the man hurried to Mordo for advice. The king just laughed because Lockwell had reported every detail without hiding anything, and the girl was naive. And soon Marino and the man entered the room where Raguda was waiting for them. The man gave them special suits. The king realized the Pope was shocked when he heard it. This could become a stumbling block between the two countries. They began putting on their suits. They knew they couldn't buy any more time. Soon everyone was in costume. In the future, they will return the book by pretending they found it in a treasure chest. After that, they opened the door with a magic key. When they opened it, they found a room with a magic circle on the ceiling. A forbidden book sat on the table. They had created the room so the book's magic would leave no trace on them. The king believed the man could decipher the book overnight. He didn't deny it and was ready, so he would not accept any more complaints from King Marito. They began decoding the book, but the more they read, the less pleased they were with its contents. During a short break, the man realized this book was a complete disaster for this world. The hieroglyphs and notes were old and hard to read. The demon lord lived more than 500 years ago, so the dates did not match the records. Movements between parallel worlds caused the inaccuracies. The real problem was the book's content. The mages did not fully understand it. If they deciphered it, the religion of Uger would send all its forces to bring it back. The man offered to return the book before it was too late and to pretend they were not involved. The king agreed, but Ragudo did not. All he could do was sigh. The book contained information that could get people into trouble. Then a startling detail in the book caught his eye. He told Marito about the dangerous information. If Ugarianism had known it, it would have already destroyed this book. A man read an excerpt from the page in a gloomy voice. Marito and Ragudo froze, stunned by what they heard. Outside it was the dead of night, and two moons cast a bright light over the area. Gazin walked down the alley enjoying a drink someone had given him, and thought the man was strange, because he always brought good drinks and treated him like an equal. Just as the man was about to move on, he heard a sound, and Getsin grew curious and listened. The old man remembered that the grandfather who lived in the house had been killed long ago, which only meant someone had broken into an empty house, so Gadsden wanted to drive the burglars away with a shout. The man paused and remembered the warning about dangerous people, but God's aunt couldn't move away before it was attacked. The priest's subordinates were angry about the damage he caused, but they didn't care because he was just a homeless tramp. To hide that they had killed the old man, they staged it as an accident. Then the mercenaries left the house. The king refused to hear what the book said, and none of them wanted to know her. Ragdor trembled with fear and panic over the entire situation. He thought bringing the book back was a bad idea. Marita suggested he tell the clergy of Ugura about the book's decryption. That could get him eliminated. Marito defended himself, saying his duty was to care for the future of the TSA people. That was why the man had to do it, but he did not agree with this. After a while they were drinking tea. Everyone was deep in thought. No one wanted a forbidden book near them. He awkwardly realized he was dealing with a problem. That would be good. If the contents of the book were fiction, the Wanderer asked about the mercenaries and thieves. They were looking into the book's origin and history, but Marito could not share information about the participants to protect the man's safety. He didn't care because before the torture started he would give everything away, and they couldn't do anything about the fact that he knew the book's contents. They devised oblivion magic, but the man had too little energy to cast it, so Tom could only learn about the mercenaries. The king understood the man's situation, but he could trust them. The Wanderer, however, did not trust anyone willing to hand him over to the enemy. Marito could only introduce him to one of the mercenaries. He was already standing behind the man. The Wanderer did not even feel him approach. The mercenary touched his shoulder. The man was about to turn, but the king's shout stopped him. Tom shouldn't have known the mercenary's identity. The Wanderer had been startled by the mercenary's sudden appearance. A mercenary guarded and escorted the king. Using magic, he hid his presence and kept the king safe. He was the most capable man in the ice. Marito felt completely safe with him. He said he had been unfairly dismissed while performing his duties, and Marito promoted him to a personal employee, which the mercenary accepted. The mercenary had watched Tom the whole time, so he trusted him, and when Tom caught the king off guard at the buffet, the mercenary wanted to eliminate him but held back. During the recent collision, the man intended to do this but then changed his mind. The other man was frightened by that information. He did not know whether the first man was joking. The mercenary knew magic and could dodge stones from the ceiling, and if his appearance was revealed, he would have to eliminate everyone, so the man shared everything he knew about the mercenaries. Calmly sipping his tea, the king noticed something. Marito saw the man's gloomy face after talking to his mercenary. Leaving the palace, the man watched the dawn after a night spent gathering information about the book and other matters when Ilias suddenly called to him, and the girl on an early morning patrol noticed he had become busier. Ilias heard he had been at the castle all night. She assumed he was with Lacra. The man sensed unnecessary misunderstandings forming. He could not give details about the book but could speak about Lacri. He said Lacra had arrived in these to find a book stolen by Decola. Ilias was glad. He apologized to her because the matter had been kept completely secret from her. Ilias felt lonely and sad, and he should not have broken his promise. The man realized Ilias felt lonely without him. Blushing, she assumed he and Lacra had a secret, felt left out, and then he pointed out she was still lonely. His words embarrassed Ilias. She told Tom to be quiet. Ulf was worried too, not just her. The man realized Ulf was more worried about Ilias. When someone she loves is upset, she feels restless. Someone suddenly called Ilias, and the man was surprised to find an incident had already happened that morning and realized someone had been killed. Then he turned to the alley items where N noticed a bag he recognized, which amazed the man, so he ran to the dead body and in shock, recognized his friend Gadsden. The girl said the men had been drinking heavily and had hit the wall hard. They also noticed a book about farming that had fallen out. The man only recently found his life's purpose. The Wanderer picked up the bag with the drink. It wasn't the amount he drank that caused the man's elimination. The flask held the drink the Wanderer had given him. Grateful, the man drank a little, but that wasn't enough to stop his condition from getting worse. Ilias noticed the man was thinking. The Wanderer learned Gadsden's body would be taken to Maya's church and wanted to go with them too. A witness said there were no docs in the man's liquidation. It is likely someone eliminated him. Gadsden fell, but his arm was uninjured, so they should investigate. They soon reached the church. A man waited for the examination results while Ilias examined Gadsden's body. The examination soon ended, and the girl said sadly that Gadsden had been killed on purpose and that his neck was broken. On hearing the investigation's verdict, the man immediately frowned, his dark, empty gaze fixed on nothing, and Ilias was startled by the sight. Realizing the man's condition, she took his arm. Panic made her heart race. In a gloomy voice, he said he was going to the castle to consult Marito. Ilias then offered to help. He tried to keep the girl out of this, but she has already stepped in. The Wanderer did not want to saddle her with debt, and Ilias would not remain silent. If she stays involved, she will regret it. Ilias told him it was better to regret something together than to let him do it alone, and he could not answer, later saying she should not have gone so far, but Ilias decided for herself whether it was worth it. Then he said she should have persuaded him to do it, and at that moment the girl drew her sword. Ilias waited for the man to calm down and give in. Since the man had lost his temper, he ended up in that position and had to agree with the girl. They had to go to the castle before Lacra answered, and Ilias was relieved. Soon they were in Marito's office, and the king awkwardly pointed to Ilias. The man explained the woman wanted to go into business, and he couldn't change her mind. The king pointed out he could simply leave her. The wanderer did not do this because he thought it was better to include her than to cut ties and leave her. The king said the problem was serious and troublesome. That decision could have cost her a close relationship with her friends. He warned that everything would be at stake, not only her ties to acquaintances, but also her bond with the wanderer, and Ilias remained calm, because if it happened, it meant they could do no more. Her determination blocked everything else, so the girl was ready to give up her connections. The king knew he could not overcome her stubbornness. That's why he told me to take the man in charge. After all, the blame was his. The man sighed and tried to start a conversation. Raising her hand, the girl could ask him questions. Then the man told them La Croque could be eliminated. Ilias raised her palm instantly. That frightened him. The girl became even more frightened by the conversation. The man decided to explain everything step by step, starting with the Ugurians who believed in the Demon King, and Ilias raised her palm again, annoyed because she also did not know the details. As a result, the man had to begin at a point Ilias could understand. He soon finished by saying they had deciphered the book. Ilias still did not understand why Lekrak would be eliminated. The Ugur clergy aimed to return the book and clear up doubts about Mayan. Lacroix wasn't the only one entrusted with that mission. Others could be hiding in the city, but Meiji's plea for cooperation said nothing about this. The scouts hid their abilities and worked as mercenaries, and they most likely killed that man this morning, but the problem was time. Archbishop Yuka was the person who directly gave instructions to Lacroix. Yuka also relied on the judgment and assessment of someone higher up. Only Papa Yukaro was taller than him. To avoid damaging relations, he asked for their cooperation, yet Gazin was destroyed after they promised to move quietly and peacefully. That meant the mercenaries answered to another boss, a member of Ugur's clergy who opposes Pope Euparo's will. The mercenaries' target is a book. At this stage, only Lacroix can get that book. The enemies do not want to return it to the Meiji. They planned to intercept and take her away, which meant they would have to get rid of Lacroix. They had reached the most dangerous topic. The enemies knew the book's contents and wanted it badly. The resurrection technique was not in the book. It contained records about the Demon King, and his creation was the strictest taboo. The book describes the birth of a Demon King through rebirth magic, nicknamed the Blue Demon King, and his observation. Alias was shocked by the news. The man said the book held a lot of information about the Demon King. The woman briefly suggested he might not have mentioned it, but then she came to her senses. Papa Euparo and his people will most likely be unable to decipher the book. To prevent any leak about the strictest taboo, they would make the interpretation useless to Lacroix. The book, however, originally belonged to Mejez. Only Meiji knew about this book, and even Papa Yukaro did not know its contents. Some Ugurians understand the Demon King's affairs and will soon reveal themselves. Ilias realized the speaker meant believers in the Demon King. She had a brief headache from too much information, and he quickly repeated that some Ugur clergy hire their own mercenaries and are looking for a book. Ilias finally understood everything. The man was upset about the time he had wasted, and the king just laughed. Marito then asked about the next steps, and the man had an idea. Joining the others in a corner, he whispered his plan. The man agreed. Anger burned in him over the destruction of an acquaintance. It had to be done, at least for revenge. Calmly, the king assigned the task to the man. Then the wanderer called to Ilya to ask if she could handle it, and she suddenly plunged her sword in, saying she would, for his sake, achieve results beyond his expectations, and the man accepted her initiative in a gloomy tone. As he left the office, he said he would reveal their plan. The sight of the man filled the girl with sadness. Seeing Gadsden's body changed him. He even shifted into a side of his personality he had kept hidden from them. The girl lives with a man, so I thought I knew him, but he showed both justice and evil at once, and right now the king is holding him back. Yet Ilias did not understand where or how the king was guiding him, and Marito was a king, not a knight, so the girl did not know which side of the man's character the king preferred. She couldn't bear to look into his dark, empty eyes. She didn't want him to see the world through those eyes, so she couldn't leave him alone. Following Yuka's instructions, the girl set up a barrier near the castle, and although her spells didn't work as planned, Lacroix was still glad. Suddenly the girl noticed the man who had been waiting for her. Lacroix wanted to know why she had been summoned. The man said the secretary wanted to tell her where the book was and that it was in the castle. At first the girl did not understand which book he meant, then she remembered the task she had been given. Lacroix was relieved when he found the book, and the girl did not doubt him. He then told her the book was written in a language not from this world. It also contained details about a resurrection technique. She thought they couldn't decipher the book. The diagrams and drawings could still reveal the resurrection technique, so she stayed calm. Then the man mentioned the illustrations. Worry spread through the crowd. The man deliberately avoided getting involved. They planned to give her the book, but first they had to give something to Archbishop Yuka. A man told me there was an opportunity to translate the text of the book in these, but it proved impossible. They likely do not have much technical knowledge, and that was not the only problem. The book lists other taboos. The man told her the king hired him because he could decipher that language. Lacrue's ability made her realize he wasn't lying. They also needed Archbishop Yuke's opinion and, if possible, Pope Euparo's. If the two refuse to cooperate, they will return the book to them immediately. At midnight by the fountain, the man will be waiting for their answer and will bring a book no matter what they decide. The king knew about it. The news saddened Lacquer. She left to make an urgent call to her superiors. Clerics can see through lies, so they did not get to the truth. Excessive and unjustified suspicion is alien to them. The problem is that it was easy to win their trust. If Lacrab passes on his words to the archbishop, they will certainly reach the Grey Cardinal working behind the scenes. A man with a gloomy expression waited for the great cardinal to fall into their trap. Confident in the plan, the priest mercenary watched it all. They had learned the book would be handed over at midnight. So the priest ordered them to get rid of the girl and seize the book. The long-haired man also pointed at the man's destruction. If Lacquer survives, it will be forgiven, but that will not work with a man. The priest also wanted to take brains from their bodies. The mercenary followed his master's orders. Meanwhile, the man's thought about the black-haired man. It proved useful to him. If he's an Earthman, events could change dramatically. The priest then began reporting to the Red Demon Lord. Midnight had fallen, and the man, with Ilias and Ulf, waited for Lacroix to appear, while a mercenary realized the guards would cause trouble, and only 4 mercenaries answered to him. Because Ilias was ranked in the top 5 and had also defeated Doklu, the leader decided against an open attack. Beast Man wasn't a problem. The girl had a lot of magical power but was too inexperienced, so they would be able to dull her feelings and overcome her. The man was ordinary and easy to destroy. The leader of the enemy mercenaries saw Lacra as the main problem. Rumors said she was absent-minded, but in battle she was different and became a real problem. If Lacra and Ilias join forces, they will have to retreat. To prevent that, numbers 1 and 2 will distract Ilias while the rest eliminate Lacra. Meanwhile, the man confirmed the book's authenticity. He waited for a reply to his request. The woman was ordered to refuse his offer and simply return the book. The man calmly accepted this. Lecro did not understand why, but realizing the book was dangerous, he decided to return it anyway because he did not want to worsen relations with the mages in the clergy. He was saddened by this, and a distant sound made Ilias decide to check where it had come from. The mercenary realized it wasn't them. Ilias stood up. That worked in their favor. The man then ordered number 1 to go to Ilias and the others to Lacrae. As he prepared to hand the book to the girl, it accidentally slipped from his palm. The enemy mercenary leader seized the chance to attack. While everyone was absorbed by the book, they intended to destroy Lacra. Almost the entire mercenary force aimed their weapons at Lacrae. Afe saw it and braced herself. In the next moment, Ilias's sword struck. Ilias appeared beside the group and attacked the mercenaries, sending one flying into the house. Some dodged her strike, but one was destroyed. Lucra froze, stunned by the sudden turn and unsure what was happening, when a man grabbed her and ordered her to quickly create a barrier. A cubic barrier suddenly covered her and the man, which let them defend against the attack. It was close. Lacroix felt embarrassed by being so near him. Realizing this, the man set the girl down and apologized. The leader of the enemy mercenaries laughed. He couldn't believe Ilias could stop a 5-person surprise attack from that distance. It wasn't a problem because she knew when they would attack. She decided they would all attack Lacra if she created the opportunity. A man watched the proud girl. Although she hadn't come up with the plan, the head of the mercenaries praised it, but as before, he needed a resurrection technique. The man realized they were mage mercenaries. Lacra could not understand why her parents wanted to kill her. Yuka would never do that. The Wanderer explained to her that someone had been working behind the scenes, that an unknown party had sent mercenaries to destroy it, and Lacra was stunned and had no idea who could have done it. Ilias took up a fighting stance. The girl thought there were only 3 mercenaries left. To their surprise, the 4th mercenary survived her attack. She was annoyed that her strike did so little, even though it sent them flying hard enough that the blow could hardly be called weak. The mercenary leader thought their situation wasn't bad. Lacro being trapped in her barrier worked in their favor. He then ordered everyone to attack the beast woman and Ilias. Ilias didn't think 3 people could stop her. The leader agreed, but they would not attack her openly. At the same moment, a huge barrage of hidden attacks rained down on the girl. Only lightning-fast reflexes let her fend off the many blows. Ilias realized the mercenaries had escaped using magic. Someone suddenly attacked La Cruz's barrier, so the girl reinforced her barrier, but she should have kept it because without it the man could be destroyed. Attacks kept coming. Ulf dodged them easily, but her poor vision made it difficult. Lacroix worried for Ulf and saw with horror that the blade was poisoned. The man showed no concern for them. Lacroix was amazed, though the man was not lying and his gloomy expression was terrifying. The wanderer realized his emotions were mirroring his thoughts, so he relaxed, smiled, and told the girl to calm down again. Though Ulfe dodged the attack, she was already exhausted, so she feigned surrender to the mercenary and immediately began gathering magical power. Ulfa gathered her magic and pretended to give up while a huge stream of power hovered around her, leaving the mercenary stunned by her magic. Ulf shouted the technique her master had taught her, then pointed her fist at the mercenary, who did not consider her an equal opponent. The girl lowered her palms. The man moved to strike with his palm, but Ulfa simply clapped, and the huge bang sent the mercenary flying, leaving Lacroix surprised by the fight while the man stayed calm. Ulf's trick wasn't a trick at all. It was just a clap in the palm of your hand that filled it with a lot of magic power. Earlier, Maya lectured on releasing magic. A mosquito flew in front of Ulfa, who had gathered magical power in her palms, and she tried to destroy it by clapping her hands. The outcome was stunning. There was no damage, but everyone was frightened. Even Ilias paused for a moment. It will easily incapacitate an ordinary person. Stunned by the cotton, the mercenary froze as Ulfa moved toward him. The trembling man tried to stop her, but she jumped into the sky. Waving her legs, she shouted Ulta would win, and then kicked her opponent. Offal landed safely on the ground while the defeated assassin lay motionless below, clenched her fists happily, and announced that victory was hers. Tensely demands to know why they are losing to this nobody, and Ilias points his sword at him and threateningly asks if he meant to call Ulf a non-entity. Ilias says Ulf is a rough diamond, already much stronger after only a month of training. The gang member stops talking, fires an arrow into the night, and says he is sure Otho will be afraid in the future, but not now, as Ilias blocks every attack with his sword, then grips the sword with both hands and says it is getting boring. Ilias declares she will finish the killer quickly. He only has time to realize it's bad. A moment later, the knight is behind him. An ornate streak of impact runs from the knight. The killer is cut in half and falls dead. Ilias says triumphantly that even after blinding her, she still feels his presence. Another attacker, trying to make sense of the situation, says she was just fooling around earlier. Ilias says she was only testing his strength, and that they are all weaker than Dakala, and the killer replies that this was expected since he had been exceptional, but turned into a jerk when he betrayed his country. The killer thinks it over and realizes the case is bad and that he is unlikely to win. First, they must distract her while they deal with the others. The man is the top murder priority, then Lacroix, who has ears and is less important. A new thought hits him. Noticing Ulf is tired and distracted, he realizes she can be taken hostage. He says he has no other choice. He goes quiet and pulls something from his bosom. Having finished explaining how to do it, he said the words, drew his dagger fully and attacked Ilias. She held her sword out as a feint. Ilias's sword deflected the dagger, and a smoke bomb exploded behind her. The knight holds his breath and warns everyone it's a smokescreen. The killer wastes no time, slips past her and approaches Alpha with the book. The mercenary grabs the book and gloats that leaving it was foolish, but before he can enjoy it, the situation reverses and a blow from above strikes his arm. Then someone hits him on the head with a hard blow. The killer's hand shoots up into the air. They didn't give him a chance. While he covers his open wound, he notices a spear stuck in the ground behind him. He is shocked by the discovery. The mercenary quickly scans the area, trying to figure out where it came from, and then notices something on the roof of the building in front of him. Sure enough, Grandfather Cargo stands on it. The killer realizes things have gone very badly, so he turns and shouts for a subordinate to go help him. Before he finishes saying who needs help, he finds his body being cut in half by Salvat Ragudo, who looks terrifying. The leader of the assassins pulls a spear from the ground and starts speaking, naming the titles of those present as the god of the spear and the strongest knight thighs. Turning to the hero with a wild grin, he asks if the hero did it, then rises slowly with his hands in his pockets and says this is a very effective way to deal with people like him. The leader has to admit defeat because if everyone had arrived at the start, they would not have even tried to join the battle. The hero replies threateningly that he delayed them on purpose so they would think they still had a chance. The hero begins to explain his clever plan to the enemy, saying Ilias left the area because a sound was created to open a passage, and Lacroix focused on defending and could not act. Only Ulfa seemed harmless to him. He likened it to a clear path ahead that he would prefer to walk along. The leader of the assassins is stunned by how much the hero wants them dead. He replies that they killed the tramp, and this is retribution. His face is a mask of cold, dark anger. Shivering, the gang leader asks if the hero is serious and whether it is really just because of this, and the hero replies confidently that they will all die because of it, then asks who killed him. The killer says it was a man who shamefully lost to a she-wolf at the very beginning. Is that right? The hero refuses to be provoked. He says he knows the leader faked his death. The man's expression darkens and the killer trembles more in his presence. The leader nervously notes the hero's terrible eyes and doubts whether he is on the right side, so the hero replies plainly that he has never killed anyone, not once. Then the killer goes beyond his demands, claiming he has people ready to kill with him. After those words, the leader immediately throws another smoke bomb, steps back, and says it is even worse. Ilya says it looks like she's going to let him go. She strikes him with a sword and the killer spits blood, but he still manages to escape. In the end, he says losing his arm made him feel better and thanks them for it. Regudo makes a thoughtful sound and says he has escaped. No one moves. Suddenly, Lacra jumps up with a loud cry of surprise. Shouting that the book is bad because he took it, she asks what they should do next. Shaking the unlucky hero for an answer, she searches for a response. He replies, upset, that it is a terrible annoyance. Freezing abruptly, she fixes him with a piercing stare and accuses him of lying, but he is not upset at being found out and instead replies with a wicked expression, which convinces her he is lying. On the run, the killer thinks he has a book, but they couldn't kill anyone, lands on a deserted street, wraps his wound in his cloak, assumes there will be a next time, and retreats. A dagger glitters in his right hand as he moves to the wall and swings to strike, but something suddenly sparks there and resonates with the book. Powerful vibrations pulsing from the wall leave the killer surprised and trying to figure out what is happening. He realizes this is Lacra's barrier. She said that if the book's magic touches the barrier's power, it will create a resonance she can feel from far away. The killer stays calm, assumes she knows he's here, and decides it's not a problem because he can climb the wall and be gone before they arrive, so he begins climbing. Clutching a dagger in one hand, he climbs the sheer wall, noting it is too heavy to manage with one hand, says he is surprised Dachala can, then falls silent, feels something, and abruptly turns back. The blow hits the jaw again, this time so strong it breaks through the wall along with the mercenary, and the protagonist slowly approaches the hole in the wall, seeing damage like a cannon shot and knowing at once it is Ilias. He remembers that as soon as the book hit the barrier, he told Ilias to hurl a projectile straight at that spot with all his strength. The hero was surprised when Marito agreed, because Marito has no tolerance. He remembers the laughing, patient king. At first he assumed Grandpa Kara would handle it because of his sniper precision. When the hero asked if he could reach the castle walls from here, Grandpa Kara said it would not be easy. Someone touched the hero's shoulder. Ilias stood behind him and promised she could finish it, so he shouldn't worry and should leave the matter to her. The hero, as you would expect from a gorilla with a muscular brain, then noticed something in the wreckage. Seeing the murderer's corpse, the hero notes how brutal the death is, but thinks it was expected after such a powerful blow, then takes out the book, glad Sir Regudo tempered it with magic, and finds she is unharmed. Suddenly the hero spots a small ball ahead and tries to identify it. After a while, inside the castle, the crowd nervously calls for the candidate herself. Sitting in an armchair across from Marito, the hero faces the book and the ball he found on the table, while Lacroix urges him to explain the situation. He only asks her to wait and opens one eye slightly, since they will soon find out everything for themselves. Everyone present looks expectant, while Ulfa sleeps peacefully outside the door. The ball begins to glow with magical energy. A voice issues from it, ordering Haid, the defeated assassin, to report. From the other side of the sphere, the hero's voice replies, explaining what it means that the killer's name was Haid, and then chuckles. The mysterious man flinches at another voice, forces a smile and asks who it is, and the hero, smiling wickedly, says he is the man the mysterious man ordered them to kill and that he is glad to meet him. The man in church clothes said he understood, so hatred had no effect. Also, the hero waited for the man's message, which shows the hero needs something from the man. Regudo waves his hand and shakes his head to stop Lacra from speaking. The hero continues, telling the man he wanted to take the opportunity to speak to him. The customer says he asked the killers to bring the man's head because he can get information from him, even after death. The man puts his hand on the sphere. The hero complains that this sounds like talk about a bad hobby but says he understood, then gets straight to the point and asks what the other would like to know first, such as what to call a man or what his name is, and the man pauses thoughtfully before replying that the hero can call him Lahate. The hero nods toward Lacroix, who shakes her head to show she did not hear his name, and he tells Lahit he is glad to meet him and invites him to ask any questions. Lahit mockingly says it's simple, then asks whether the hero has any more questions and pauses in an intriguing way. After revealing his true identity, the hero mocks that Lahit has no personality beyond the demon lord's lapdog, yet Lahit keeps smiling, freezes briefly, then asks how the hero arrived at that conclusion. Revealing his cards, the hero says he has decoded the book and it was simple. Lahit mocks him, calls it very interesting and asks what was in it. He cuts Lahit off to stop him from playing the fool. He insists Lahit already knows the book's contents, so he wanted to kill the hero who claimed he could decipher it, but Lahit denies the accusation and says he only wanted to kill him on a whim. Ilias, Lacra, and Marito look disgusted, horrified, and skeptical. The hero doesn't reply to Lahit. He keeps probing the ground and asks if he'd be in trouble if his connection to the demon lord was revealed, and whether Lahit planned to become a demon with the lord's help. Awkwardly starting with, "What are you?" he is interrupted by the hero, who says he is beginning to lose confidence in his words and asks that he be allowed to show more self-control. The room goes silent and everyone freezes. The hero shrugs, says it doesn't matter, and that he'll answer his question anyway, explaining the book contains records of observing the blue demon lord after his exile. Former human used resurrection magic to revive a man and turn him into a blue demon lord, and the man wrote down everything that happened to him. The book contains detailed analysis of a person's abilities, talents, and lifestyle, and from the start the author contacted them to turn them into demon lords. This author was involved in those deaths and also gave them strength, and all demon lords received the same abilities, including a way to create a demon world as their territory and to turn people into demons. Each overlord received a unique ability. The text asks why it is called a book on necromancy. The Blue Demon King commanded the undead. The author passed his knowledge to the demons, which unleashed chaos and the worst events in history. Winzing replies that the hero did decipher the book, and just as Lahit suspected, he asks whether the hero is an Earthman. The hero agrees his words are correct, but says Lahit is clearly not from there, which is a pity. Lahit asks why he is so sure. The hero replies that Lahit mispronounced it, showing he only heard about it. Lahit does not deny this. The hero asks if he should explain why he called Lahit a lapdog, saying the Lord's abilities were written in the book so he assumed they should stay secret, but he changed his mind when Lahit tried to steal it. Lahit walks thoughtfully around the room and asks why the Yuguro church also tried to return the book, since the hero already knows about it, but the hero replies that he should not speak because he has not even told the priest what the book contains. Lahit smiles and asks why the priest does not know the contents, as the hero thinks, and the hero sighs wearily before explaining grimly that the dead demon lords will be resurrected, adding that if he had known, the Yuguro church would have handled the matter differently. Lahit said that what he suspected was also in the book, and drew his own conclusion with a slight smile, but he admitted one thing puzzled him, since even if he served the demon lord nothing should show that. The hero replied that he had taken Dokla in his hands, and Lahit, smiling haughtily, fell silent. The hero outlines his thought process, which begins with Dokla, a half-breed murderer, and examines why he betrayed his country, stole the book, and entrusted it to an Earthman he had just met. By following the logical chain, the hero answers his questions, yet because the introducer of the forbidden resurrection magic was an Earthling and the book was unreadable to him, he must have learned about it by other means. The hero says he heard this from Lahit when Dachala was still a murderer. One day he discovered there was a man behind the scenes manipulating Archbishop Yuke. The country he trusted was corrupt. Dokal stole the book to use in negotiations, but it turned out to be more than he could handle. Now he could only trust the people he could control. An Earthman appeared, so Dokula entrusted him with the book as he neared death, hoping the man could reveal who was behind the crystal ball. Lahit nods thoughtfully and agrees with the hero, saying Dachala was truly exceptional, and it was surprising that the hero noticed him. The hero clarifies that it was more convenient for Lahit to, and reveals his intentions, saying he hid in the Yuguro church but struggled to get the book, so he asked Dokla to get it for him. Although risky, it was his only chance to more easily finish one of his tasks. Lahit observes that Earthlings are full of intelligent people. The hero interrupts the other man and says he seems to mean some of it. That man probably thinks the hero is a fool who talks too much. Lahit pretends to ask whether the man said that himself. Lahit sees information as a weapon, and the hero foolishly brags and gives away everything he knows, then falls silent. He replies that he prefers safety to living rationally, then turns to Lahit and says that living wisely would make him like Lahit, and adds that he has seen many who use people for profit and does not want to become one. Lehade also says this is very rude of the hero. Will his conscience torment him if he acts that way? The hero says he is still weak, so all he needs is to live in peace, physically and mentally, but then a door breaks behind Lehade. The hero finishes by saying that people like him will interfere. The crackling at the door grows louder, and any moment strangers will burst into the room. At last, the door cannot withstand the magic, and a stout man in a casque bursts in, tearing the door to shreds. Alongside this, the hero says he told the priest of Yukaro through Archbishop Maya because the person who carelessly spreads word in this crisis is the mastermind, namely Lihi, and priests stand on the threshold, led by their chief, while he shouts angrily that Lihi plotted against them and calls him a rat. Facing each other, the archbishop and the servant of the Lord sized each other up. Yuk was angry, while Lahi stayed arrogantly calm. Lahi told Yuk-sama that from Yuk's expression, his hypnosis appeared to have worked. Lahitu tries to hypnotize the archbishop, but the hypnosis fails, and Uki grows even angrier, shouting that this is painfully audacious and that magic of this level does not work on him. Lahitu realizes he has increased the resistance in his mind. This old idiot used countermeasures against his hypnosis. The archbishop signals the other priests to form a perimeter and tells Lahite he has nowhere to run and should surrender. Lahido says he is interested and begins to reproduce the spell with his hand. 5 small runes immediately appear around Yuk, and Lahido admits he was wrong about that part. Sharp spikes erupt from the runes, striking the spot where Yuka had been standing a moment before, and the archbishop barely dodges. While he recovers, Lehai too ends up at the door because the other had taken him seriously, and he says goodbye to him. Yuk warns not to underestimate him, uses magic, and pins the fugitive to the ground, while Lahidi wonders whether gravity is magic and looks up to see a magic circle above him. He concludes the priest used a circle above him. Lahite says the priest can create such strong gravitational pressure. The priest is impressive despite being called the weakest archbishop. Uki accepts Lahitu's words as true and says he is weaker and less accomplished than other archbishops. The fugitive listens carefully as the priest declares that, despite everything, he is still an archbishop, his expression showing firm determination. Keeping the gravity spell active, he tells Lahite it's over, then finds the strength to lift a finger and use it again, saying he wouldn't say that. A circle of runes appears above the archbishop again and destroys his spell. Then a moment later sharp spikes fly out of it, and the fugitive gets up and moves toward the door. He steps back to avoid the attack, and Lahitu says it was very close. A smell makes him stagger, and the priest repeats that it's over. Lahido clutches his head and realizes the incense is making him sleepy. It's lying by the stairs, and he knows he must quickly form a barrier, but when he raises his hand, nothing happens. Confused, he asks himself whether he has not been activated. Luca repeats that it's over. He says not to make him repeat it 3 times. The priest ends the fight by casting a spell that binds Lahida in a magic cube. While a hater watches the sleepy incense, a small sphere falls from his clothes. Picking it up and holding it at eye level, he says everything is clear to him, and a calm smile returns to his face. Grimly smiling, he tells Yuka the sealing stone stopped him from using magic. Lahite tosses the stone aside and admits he was careless. The man doubts the priest had time to drop him off and adds that barriers should be made only around themselves. He went on to say he not only used 2 barriers, but also moved the second barrier, luring Lahate inside with the sleeping incense, and said this was expected of the archbishop. The demon lord's own servant knows his magic is sealed by a stone, so he cannot break the barrier. Sleep-inducing incense makes his body heavy. Accepting the situation, he draws a dagger and assumes it's checkmate. Yuka warns that such a small dagger won't help. He objects, insisting he can still do something for them. Lahite says that until they extract information from him, it will still count as his victory. Luca suddenly sees what the enemy intends, but he can no longer stop it. Lahite, with a creepy smile from ear to ear, presses a dagger to his neck, declares he has outplayed them all, then offers a final farewell. In the next moment, he cuts his throat and looks triumphantly at the sphere he used to communicate with the hero. His body falls to the floor and goes still, and the hero on the other side realizes the fight did not end in his favor. Later, the Magis reported that Lahite committed suicide when he realized he could not escape, and his corpse was tightly sealed because a third party might try to take it. The hero was shocked to learn that Archbishop Yuka had driven Lahite to take his own life. Lakra says that's not surprising, because he was her teacher. The hero concludes that she became like this because of her teacher, but this shows they had done something great. He is confident the Pope of Paro can handle it. Marito also explained about 90% of the book's mystery to Maya, since she was cleared of all suspicion. When the Pope of Paro heard this, he went to Theus. I'm taking the book back because I need to apologize personally for this incident and act responsibly. On the balcony, the hero announces the case is closed, but Morito beside him objects, saying that if his hypothesis is true, there must still be a man or a demon lord who sent Lahite there. The hero sighs wearily, understanding it perfectly, and tells the king to speak to Popiparo himself and do something about it. This has turned the problem into something delicate. Morito agrees. Morito wants Popiparo to tell the hero about this, but the hero stubbornly refuses, saying it is the king's job and that they are already too burdened. Morito, lying on the railing, complains that the hero might become king. Lost in thought, he realizes nothing has been decided. The book's biggest challenge still lies ahead. The only thing left is that they haven't told the others yet. They'll have to decide how to handle it after they tell Papa Yukaro. It could certainly upend world history. The hero thinks it's better to leave it unspoken. The hero decides these should be peaceful days no matter what, tells Morito he will leave and thanks him for everything, and Morito, surprised, asks if this is despite his wanting to see the hero tomorrow. Reluctantly, the hero asks why he needs it, and the king says it will let him describe his world in more detail. Awkwardly scratching his head, the man asks if this was just a cover to decode the book, but Morito says he is saying this. They seem to be working on different strategies, and of course the contract will be extended. The hero has no choice but to agree, realizing his peaceful days have not yet arrived, while Morito stands beside me looking pleased, and the hero then tells the king not to come to him with crazy ideas, but the king just laughs and says they are friends. The hero screams helplessly, but it does not stop him from coming closer. Later, after the conversation, he slowly approaches the church, goes inside, and sees Maya standing over Ulf. The young wolf stares absently into the air, then notices her master and looks at him happily, sits at the table to study, and the hero approaches to say she is always loyal and that he is proud of her, and she replies in the same tone that Ulf is amazing too. Maya grabs the hero's shoulder, and with an irritated smile, says that unlike someone always scheming with his majesty, the hero awkwardly apologizes. Trying to continue, he says he wants to apologize this time, but before he finishes, Maya points out that even Ilias tried to deceive her and tells him to stop being a bad influence on my daughter's best friend. At last she exhales in satisfaction and says she can give him a passing grade for coming here to apologize, since she knows he had a good influence on Ilias, but the hero does not understand what she means. Maya continues, saying she has recently grown stronger mentally, and after living in her father's shadow for so long this is a welcome change. She then turns to the hero and says Ilias is her daughter's best friend, and she wants to keep an eye on her so she grows up properly. She ends her tirade and asks everyone to wait while she makes tea. The hero frowns to one side. Ulfe sits beside me, writing eagerly. He sits next to her and says he needs to tell her something. First he apologizes to her. Ulfe stares at him, and the young wolf does not understand why. She asks the master whether she did something wrong, and the hero says he used her as bait at night. He figured using Ulfe, who seemed the weakest, as bait would draw out the killers. At that point it was by far the most effective method. Confessing, he says there were other ways, but he used Ulfa as bait and is no different from the Black Wolf tribe that tormented her, leaving Ulfa shocked. She flies up to the master and tugs his sleeve once, telling him he is wrong because he was angry. The hero looks at her in confusion, but the wolf says that when he saved her, he was angry because of the wolf. The hero begins to understand what the young wolf is trying to say, and she replies that this is Ulfa's most precious treasure, adding that if the master is angry for the sake of others, Ulfa wants to help them alongside the hero. The hero freezes for a moment in sunlight streaming through the church's stained glass. Ulfe leaves his hand on her sleeve and watches him silently. The hero says he understands and pats Ulfe on the head. Ulfe says that since the master apologized, she will forgive him. The hero thanks her. He knows she's already grown into a beautiful young girl and is strong, not someone whose emotions are easily influenced. The hero can't escape his thoughts, convinced this is why Ilias has been scolding him for so long and that he didn't even hesitate to use Ulf. The hero tells Ulfa he is thinking of planting something at their house and asks if she wants to help. Ulfa, wagging his tail happily, says he wants to try. The hero realizes that despite Ulfa's weak psyche, he is untrustworthy. Planning to find Gazin's book, he hopes to learn what crops Gazin wanted to grow. Ulfa says he dislikes vegetables, and the hero replies that he will love them once he grows up. The hero decides that when the vegetables grow, he will put them on his grave, though he would prefer sake. With a confident smile, the hero tells Ulfa he has sad news. Ulfa flinches, her heart racing, and after a brief pause he adds that Lekro will come to them. Ulf repeats the master's words to herself, but cannot understand why they are sad news. A few hours earlier, the hero had been sitting in the city square, enjoying the sun, peace, and quiet. He noticed how pleasant the weather was, and thought that after so much restlessness lately, it felt good to relax like this. When the assassins came, Ilias did most of the damage to this block, but now it is completely restored as if nothing happened, and the magic is truly amazing. The hero focuses on her. In a single night, the section of the castle wall Ilias destroyed was rebuilt. Ragudo's team clearly worked through the night to repair everything. She admires magic. Lost in magic and relaxation, the hero does not notice Lacra crying by his bench. He is unaware because he is thinking he would like to learn magic himself, even a simple spell. It is unclear whether training can help him achieve it. Lacra bursts into tears and makes distressed expressions. The hero finally notices her, but he quickly gets up from the bench to go to lunch, and Lacra grabs his sleeve and tells him he cannot just ignore her. Desperate, the hero asks Lockrid to let him go because he wants to stay in a good mood today, and Lockrid does not pull away, saying he should help her as she keeps crying, and explains that she was kicked out of the Mayasama church. The hero replies innocently that she's finally been exiled, pats her on the shoulder to comfort her, and says he regrets her loss, but Lecres says she wasn't exiled. Convinced she tried to help, but instead ruined everything and was told to leave, or something like that, the hero hits the bullseye. The hero concludes she is useless after being told to stay at Maya's church until Yukaro arrived, but she made a mess and was kicked out because Maya said they were busy preparing for the harvest festival and did not want any extra hassle. Apparently, she also put up barriers during the inspection. Other priests can do it 10 times faster. The hero knew she would be chased away sooner or later, but he did not expect it to happen so quickly. Now Lecro clings to the hero's shoulder and asks him for help, but he coldly says he is not skilled enough to cure her uselessness and tells her to let go of her clothes. Lecro lets him go but keeps following, awkwardly mumbling that it does not matter, or at least not much, and then asking to stay with him, but the hero stubbornly refuses and Lecro utters a pitiful why. The hero replies lightly that he lives in Ilias's house, so he can't just let a freeloader in on his own. Lacrai is briefly surprised. Heart's eyes sparkle as she forces a smile and points out that a young man and a girl live under the same roof, but the hero interrupts to remind her she forgot about Ulf. Lecro has already found a way out of this situation. She clears her throat and says this is not good, warning that if a mistake happens, he will need her supervision. The hero reassures her so she does not worry, saying the only possible mistake is murder from an incorrect force adjustment, and Lacra first mumbles that it might be then changes her answer to no. She has reason to scream that she must protect them both from his hidden motives, but the hero says she has hidden motives too, tells her to give up and sleep outside, and Lacras screams that it is cruel. Lecro pleads for more help, saying she no longer wants to sleep under the bench. She points to the straw beneath where he was sitting, and he realizes she really did sleep there. Lecro breaks off her complaints, crying that she is lonely and scared here, while the hero realizes he cannot get away and notes her stubbornness. They find Ilias still eating a kebab. After hearing them, she says she doesn't mind. The hero looks shocked, not expecting agreement, and Lecro glows with happiness. Confronting Ilias, the hero demands to know why she did it, and says she should have refused her, while Lacra runs around the square pleased by the news, and Ilias does not understand what she did wrong. Speaking seriously, she tells the hero that as a noble knight, she cannot leave a woman sleeping under this cold sky. The hero asks whether she is pretending to be cool. The hero tells them to stay calm. They only have 3 bedrooms, and he would feel bad making her share with another woman since, as a man, he cannot share a bed with her. Ilias offers Alpha a room. The hero does not lose hope and calls her a fool, saying so. Suddenly, her uselessness will affect Ulf. Meanwhile, Lacra asks if the hero is too cruel. The hero gets Ilias to take these matters seriously. She agrees he is right, and Lacryad finds that even Iliasen thinks so. Ilias says Lacro will sleep in the attic. The hero says he understands, thanks her for everything, and starts to gather his things. Ilya tells him to stop and says she was joking. Ilya says the pantry has plenty of room and just needs cleaning. The hero isn't happy and says it's too early to conclude that. Ulfa should ask about it too. A few hours later, back in the conversation between the hero and Ulfa, Ulfi says everything is fine and that she likes Lacra. Ulfi hugs Ulfa warmly and calls her a good girl. The hero behind them realizes he is completely defeated. Taking charge, the hero ties a handkerchief to his head, reluctantly says you need to clean everything quickly, asks Ulta for help. Lecro tries to do what she can, but he answers her hesitantly. The hero and Ulfa start sorting the pantry. Ulfa pulls out an old chest of drawers, and the hero shows her where to put it. Lacra watches from around the corner and decides she can help, so while they are distracted, she walks down the stairs carrying a box of things. She stumbles and falls with the box while the hero's allies rush to catch her, and after cleaning, Lecro relaxes in a wooden bathtub as a spider starts hanging from the ceiling behind her. Lacra spots him and makes a fuss. The hero and Ulf outside the door prick up their ears at her scream. Lacra says she saw Spider, the candidate she hates, in person. Both people in the next room freeze and turn toward the door. The hero asks Ulfi to say he did nothing. Ulfi says it's fine because her master has a perfect alibi. He cannot tell who taught her that word. Lacra jumps out of the bathroom, and another one identical to her appears, points accusingly at the hero, and shouts at him. Then the three of them start cleaning the room. Lacra notices a bucket of water in the center of the room and intends to take revenge on the hero. Picking it up, she moves toward the man, who notices and tells her to stop. Moments later, Lacra falls, knocking the bucket over onto herself and Ulfa. The hero freezes in his attempt to stop her. After the incident, the girls relax together in the bath. Evening falls and Ilias returns home. She comes in and says she is back, and all three greet her cheerfully. They have already bathed and changed their clothes. The hero sees that the third freeloader has quickly blended in with them. Ulf rushes to the newcomer with joy, and Ilias confirms she is at home. She realized she had no idea there were so many. In front of them lay a mountain of items taken from the storeroom. Ilias said she kept stuffing things into the pantry. All of this was connected to Rachel's family. Noticing how high quality they are, the hero says they are important to Ilias. She smiles in agreement, then pulls out a sword and twirls it in her hand. Ilias draws the sword from its scabbard and makes a small swing. She says he brings back memories. The late king gave this sword to her father. The hero says that if he remembers correctly, her father was a knight of Thea's and her mother was a priest like Maya. Ilias confirms he is right. They were both good parents and she respects them. Ilias put the sword back with a clink. The hero suggests tossing their memorabilia, but Ilias says she needs to sort them, and it makes no sense to keep so many, so she plans to donate them to Maya's church and Rigudo's team. She opens one of the drawers and finds 2 sets of clothes. Ilias notices they are his size. The hero thinks he could become a decent man like her father if he dressed her up. Skeptical, the hero says clothes with effects are cursed. Ilias smiles and says they should continue tomorrow and go to bed early tonight. She says she has a message from the king. He says the king wants to see the hero at the castle tomorrow morning. The hero asks again whether Marito said that and wonders what the king wants from him. Meanwhile, La Crocra says she is hungry. Ulf rushes into the kitchen saying she will bring food, and the hero taps Lacra on the head saying she will help too. Ilias goes upstairs. Lacra wipes the table, and Ulf puts the food on it. 4 people sit at a table full of food, and that is how another freeloader joined their house. After dinner, everyone goes to bed. Lacra falls asleep holding Alfin. The next day at the palace, Ilias and the hero walk down the corridor to Marito's office. Marito is already there and tells Ilias that from that day on she is to protect an important person. Ilias is flattered and cannot believe she was chosen. The hero casually notes that father of Pero has already arrived today. Marito replies no, saying if Pero's father will come with many people and will probably be late, leaving the hero puzzled about who this important person is. Marito calmly says he is standing in front of him and then points his finger at the hero to confirm. Marito says he's a hero and opens his eyes in surprise. The shocked hero asks for an explanation, and Marito replies that the hero lacks self-awareness, though speaking the language of the earth makes him an important person. The king says ironically that if this is found out there will be more like Lehitu who will come to his head. Marito raises an eyebrow, doubtful the hero can defend himself, and the hero reflects on the king's measure, finds some sense in it, and then speaks aloud. The hero doubts Ilias will be his bodyguard and says so skeptically. Ilias replies indignantly that there is no problem with it. Marto says he has someone in mind and asks to speak, but refuses to give up Surrogato. The hero shows no surprise. Excitement makes the hero sweat. He thinks Ilias could be perfect for this, but it's Ilias. Marito begins to understand what's happening, and with a sly smile, asks the hero whether he would prefer it to be a woman. Ilias goes rigid and falls silent. The hero seethes inwardly that the king only provoked Ilias and wonders if it was deliberate. She begins to tremble with anger. He exhales wearily and says it was not, and Ilias brightens at the words. He continues that, on the contrary, he would prefer it to be a woman, but Ilias lacks charm. He believes Ilias is perfect for this job regardless of her gender, but her compatibility with him is a little off. The hero stops talking and the king picks up, and Marito ironically asks who he thinks he is most compatible with. Thoughtfully, the hero narrows one eye and says that if judged among all the knights it would be Grandfather Kara. Ilias reacts with indignation at those words. Sometime later, Ilias and Grandfather Kara clash at the training ground at night, spears in hand and armor on, while anger burns in Illyria's eyes. Ilias tightens his grip on his sword to control his anger and tells the opponent they will fight now. She tells Grandpa Kara not to hold back and to fight like his life depends on it, and Grandpa Kara looks unhappy that it has come to this. A dark aura from Ilias makes grandfather Kara tremble, so he turns to the hero and calls him, asking what happened and saying it looks like Princess Ilias wants to kill him, and the hero explains that Ilias was ordered by his majesty to guard him, which he believes is true. Grandfather Kara doubts this and asks if they spoke about something else. The hero reflects on his words and remembers he named Kara when the choice was offered, which fits since Kara is his friend, and Marito thought about the hero's answer, saying Mr. Domter Kafkan might really be suitable. Marito objects, saying the escort position is already taken, and it would be hard to put him there, and sympathetically asks if they should call the young knight to his escort spot. But the hero says it's unnecessary, because then the conversation with Ilias would be short, so Marito accepts and it's decided. He orders Mrs. Rachel to protect the hero. She is outraged but obediently replies that she understood the order. After hearing the hero's story, Grandfather Kara says he understood everything and, looking accusingly, steps aside. He hugs the hero and says security is an honorable job, but he would feel uncomfortable if someone else was said to be more suitable for the role. The hero, shocked, asks if that is true. Grandpa Kara is already walking away, wailing that it's terrible, while the hero apologizes awkwardly, and the chorus grandfather only tells the hero to rely on him because he has that honor. For the first time, the hero realizes he's watching a duel between Grandpa Kara and Ilias. Ilias has the strength of a group of gorillas, and Grandpa Kara matches her. Despite great progress in training, Ulfe still hasn't landed a single blow on Grandpa Kara. Ulfe now supports Ilias. Surprised, the hero sees her and doesn't understand why she's here. Ulfa shouts at Ilias to put Grandpa on his shoulder blades. He wonders how she knows these words. Convinced, she still sulks about their first meeting and now thinks poorly of him. The hero apologizes to his grandfather again. Meanwhile, the duel begins. Kara's grandfather drops his casual expression and braces to attack, fixes his gaze on Ilias, then rushes forward and delivers a sweeping spear blow. He accelerates and makes several quick attacks, but Ilias fends them all off. The hero shouts that Grandpa can do it and is not slower than Ilias. She hears the words, meets his gaze, then suddenly grabs the tip of the opponent's spear, and the hero freezes as Ilias feigns surprise. She says she understands what speed means. A mocking grin crosses her face. Kara's grandfather tries to pull the spear from her hands but fails. She grips the spear with her spear hand, and he hangs defenselessly on it. Then she lets go, and Kara's grandfather waits unhappily for a trick. Ilias slams the opponent in the stomach, sending him flying several meters. The hero calls out loudly. The opponent plants his spear in the ground to slow Ilias' attack. As he tries to make sense of it, his anger fades and his face goes stupid. Ilias rushes at the old man in fury and mercilessly attacks him head-on. The old man tries to block the blow with a pained expression, but the strike is so strong that he falls to his knees, and Ilias sheathes his sword, ending the duel with formal words of gratitude. Anxious, the hero calls his grandfather Kara. Kara suddenly says 3 words, "Lower back, I'm dying, goodbye," and collapses. The hero starts shouting his name. While the knights carry their grandfather away on a stretcher, Ulfe runs up to Ilias, smiling and admiringly says she is strong. The hero shrugs and says Ilias should have thought of grandfather, and she turns to him indignantly and asks what he means, and Ilias replies seriously that Grandfather Kara is a very experienced warrior, and she could not fight half-heartedly. The hero objects, saying she can keep up with the old man's pace, and that the duel should be treated as training, and Ilias, unsure what to say, blushes and stubbornly insists it's hard to tell who is stronger as the hero watches her intently. He asks if she cares about the hero, saying Grandpa Kara is a better fit, and explains he meant it's easier to plan strategies with him. The hero says she knows he prefers to plan strategies rather than fight personally. Grandpa Kara clearly understands his role and stays steady. At the right moment, that will play a huge role. Ilias asks indignantly about her, and the hero says she is too strong, so the battle becomes easier once she joins. Mortified, Ilias says that's how he sees her, then turns and tells her she can be relied on without a doubt, and that if the case were only about protecting her, he wouldn't mind. Returning to the topic, the hero says he just wants someone to consult with, and asks whether she would be happy to use a trump card like hers. When Ilias tries to answer, the hero interrupts her by placing his hand on her head, insists she can be trusted completely, and in that moment he feels oddly pampered. The hero says he does not want her to feel worthless, and apologizes for making her feel bad, admitting he was wrong. Ilias touched the spot where his hand had been a second ago. She says if that's the case, she should also apologize to Kara's grandfather. Ilias quickly runs off with Ulfa, and the hero turns to scold her, asking whether she thinks her recent words were acceptable, but she replies flippantly that Grandpa deserved it. The hero asks wearily when she will reconcile with him, and Malfade cheerfully says he will think about it. Meanwhile, Ilias enters Grandfather Kara's room, where Kara lies propped up in bed with a healing magic stone on his lower back. Ilias, wearing a guilty expression, says she acted out of resentment and apologizes to her grandfather, but he laughs, says she must have talked with the boy, and tells Ilias not to worry because he understands everything. He lifts the towel off the magic stone and keeps talking, but in the end he really loses. He looks at the girl closely and asks if she really wants to take his place now, but he only replies that he does not dare. Grandpa Kara tells her he likes how she goes out of her way to get the boy to notice her, though she does not seem to know why she does it. Ilias still does not understand why he is going out of his way. Confused, she asks whether Grandpa knows, and he answers yes. Then before she finishes, he says it is love and nothing else. Ilias is not happy with the answer. A dark aura surrounds her. He draws a sword and says if she breaks his lower back now the pain will stop, and Grandpa Kara says he was only joking. Trembling, he tries to convince her he has a wife and children, so she should know what love is, but her feeling is something other than love. Ilias menacingly asks what it is then. The grandfather says it's respect or something like it, not the kind a knight shows, but respect for someone who can do what you cannot. Grandpa says the boy does not live like them, and if needed he will try to understand the villain's heart. Ready to follow this path, the boy's heart is different from the knight's. He says her spirit is, of course, the most chivalrous, and she refuses to follow any other path, including a boy's. She admires him for being willing to take whatever path he chooses. Ilias clenches his fist and asks the old man to speak more plainly. Then Grandfather Kara asks whether Ilias, following the knight's path, could turn to evil and immediately replies that of course he could not, while Grandpa, chuckling at her fervor, says that's it. The boy understands knights and other people and can do what others cannot, so she wants him to acknowledge her, and after the old man's explanation, Ilias' face brightened and she replies that she accepts the answer because she is not mature yet. Grandpa says this is true and asks her not to be biased because she wants the boy to appreciate her. She asks whether he thinks so too, and he explains it is not limited to one boy. Praise from His Highness would mean a lot to her. Being recognized by someone who can do what you can't brings real joy. At first, Ilias is surprised by his words, but a knowing smile soon spreads across her face. Grateful, she thanks him because she now understands much. Then she leaves and slams the door behind her. The smile slowly freezes on Grandpa Kara's face. Returning to bed, he complains about the hero he backed on the battlefield, says the man can't imitate others well, and almost got him killed as night falls. Ilias talks about his grandfather's condition, and the hero, twirling the liquid in his glass, says it's to be expected from Grandfather Kara. Ilias admits she is embarrassed, but the hero tells her not to worry because he should be ashamed, and Ilias says that from tomorrow she will protect him and he can rely on her. Ulf and Lacra are already sleeping peacefully while the others talk. The hero is relying on Ilias, and she asks him what kind of sticky bread sits on the table, which makes him glad she asked. Acting important, the hero says he found this stick in the forest and fixed it, and it's his second partner because the first went for firewood. His speech fails to inspire Ilias. She says she will defeat them with a single blow and that he can take their weapons if necessary. The hero tells her he cannot handle such a burden. He says this stick will do and that he made it to avoid forgetting what matters. No matter how strong the allies are, he can fight only with this. Do not rely too much on the people around him. Fight so he can be proud of himself. Ilias understood his intentions and said there was nothing to be done then. She told the hero not to hesitate to speak if he needed anything, and as he left the table he replied that one garment would be enough for him. Too many belongings will make moving difficult, and when Ilias asks if the hero plans to leave, the hero answers that it is definitely not now. Meanwhile, the hero keeps thinking, if he no longer has to live here, he could try moving to another country. Ilias covers one hand with the other and asks in a trembling voice whether he is not satisfied with thighs, and the hero replies that on the contrary, he could not be dissatisfied in such a favorable environment, so Ilias clasps her hands and asks why. The hero, unaware of anything, says he wants to find a way back to his world, that he likes this life, and that he wants to care for Ulf and properly thank Ilias. Despite everything, the hero says he still does not know what the future holds. The comforts of his past world may not be enough, and he might run out of strength to live in this world. For now, he looks for every possible way out and forces himself to adapt to this world. He decides he will not leave. You are leaving everything here responsibly. Ilias does not need to worry about it. In the end, this will have consequences. He exhales slightly. Ilia's mood shifts, but she keeps smiling and says that if he disappears, Ulfa will be lonely. And the hero, not noticing Ilia's state, replies calmly that it's possible but Paige just needs to learn more about this world. So until then he will try to give her as many new encounters and sensations as he can. He won't leave Ulf with dubious people. Pride lights his face. Ilias awkwardly notices he really is acting like her father. Ilias asked if the hero had friends or family there. The question caught him off guard, and his mood soured immediately. Turning away from Ilias as he went upstairs, he said it was personal and that maybe one day when he got drunk he would tell her, and until then he asked for forgiveness. He wishes the girl good night and goes to bed. Ilias keeps holding on. She realizes his way of life is far from the chivalry she believes in. She can't imagine living like this, but he follows that path without a trace of doubt. Angry at him for choosing the path of evil, she believed he had gone down a road with no return. He switches between them without hesitation. After the duel, Kara's grandfather told her the boy respected her and she should remember that. She runs one way while you go another. According to Grandpa, the boy will not be able to do that. Finally, when it comes to knightly respect, the hero respects Ilias more than grandfather Kara. Ilias begins to believe she and the hero are the same person. They are drawn to each other by what neither can do alone. Ilias still doubts that is the right way to think. She does not know which path he will choose in the future, and right now he, Ilias, has not finished the sentences in his head. Dawn breaks and Ilias, already in his armor, bursts into the hero's bedroom shouting that it's morning, but the hero shows no sign of waking. So Ilias repeats that it's morning and tells him to get up, and the hero whispers an apology, saying the sun has just risen. Silence falls between them. The hero jumps up abruptly and asks why Ilias is here. Ilias answers happily that starting today she will be his guard and stay with him all day from the moment he wakes. The hero cuts her off sharply, saying he understands and is getting up. Sleepily he walks to the closet with his things, yawning, then stops to look at Ilias beside him and asks sarcastically if she will change his clothes, and Ilias, with bright eyes, says she does not mind. The hero decides he'd rather do everything himself and throws her out the door with the word out. They come down for breakfast, and Ilias stands at the foot of the stairs staring intently at the hero as he eats, while a sleepy Ulfa is already coming down the stairs. She joins us for breakfast. The hero invites Ilias to eat with them, but she says she already ate. Overjoyed, Ilias starts bombarding the hero with questions, asking if he has finished eating and if he wants to go outside or do something else. Ulf leads the depressed hero outside, grabs his sleeve and tells him to go, so the three walk away while Laka stays home and watches them leave sadly, as Ilias follows the hero with a careless smile, enjoying their shared moment. Later the hero and Marito walk down the castle corridor. The king laughs because the hero has just explained the situation to him. Marito says it shows the hero is doing well and makes clear where so many people come from. The hero apologizes awkwardly. Marito says he's not upset. In the end they were able to talk about more important things, the weather forecast from his world and how different their worlds are fascinate him. He then notices the hero gets along well with La Krazolf from the Yugu Rachurch, since he'd heard they lived together. The protagonist says she is slowly settling into local life, has found a manageable job, and will now pay rent. Marito is surprised. The hero believes La Kray struggles to focus on multiple things at once, but does well when she concentrates on one task, and in battle her single goal is to destroy the enemy, so she excels. Once Maya asked her to embroider a complicated pattern, and Lacroix completed it at almost superhuman speed. In tasks like that, she is more reliable than most, though her childish behavior is hard to change. Marito notices that, despite everything they've worked so hard on with her, she may have guessed something. The hero looks at the king, puts a hand on his shoulder and tells him not to worry. Marito is at a loss. Confidently, the hero says that Lacroix knows nothing and couldn't drag her to me by herself. The king freezes for a moment as he realizes what he said, then exhales and admits he has no words, and the hero grins contentedly. They step into the garden as bright sunlight briefly blinds the hero, who makes a sound of admiration while they take in the cozy garden with a gazebo and a fountain, and he says it is a nice garden. Marito says proudly that he knows they are heading toward the gazebo. The hero says it looks like Western-style gardens from Earth, though he has rarely seen them, and Marito again says how amazing he is. He asks the hero if there really were none in his country, and the hero calmly replies that in Japan, all gardens were built on the principle of wabi-sabi. The aesthetic has deep symbolism that is hard to explain, like finding beauty when flowers are not in bloom, and it includes bonsai, small potted trees. Morito wonders whether they can be grown indoors. The hero says Mana can nourish these trees and comes up with an idea, recalling Mana and noting that the trees on the ridge of the Demon Lord Killer are quite beautiful, and Marito agrees. According to legend, the leaves and trunks there glow as if they absorb the water's magic. Marito Dremley says it sounds great and wants to see them at least once. The hero turns to Ilias and says she is probably bored, but Ilias denies it. Marito asks Lee Rachel whether she also spends time admiring flowers sometimes. Ilias replies excitedly that she prefers blades and could look at them for hours. The hero and Marito stare at her, puzzled. Marito says the hero supports his taste in color. Marito suddenly asks if the hero wants to get married. The hero says that's sudden and adds he needs it more. Marito doesn't deny it. People often tell Marito he must find his queen. The hero believes he is a queen. He sees it that way. A man asks about the Marito brothers. The hero replies that his father has 3 wives. He is the only prince. The other children are his younger sisters. The hero sees a benefit. There will be no fight for power. Marty agrees and says his younger sisters can marry whoever they choose and leave the country to become adventurers. The hero is surprised. Papa Dinette says everyone is worried about Marito, but acting as if nothing happened, so they are looking for a bride for him. The king agrees but remains uneasy. Marito tells the hero that at those dinners, he meets girls in person, but likes none of them, and every time the dinners end with nothing, it leaves him mentally exhausted. Marito invites the hero to join him, promising girls more beautiful than any the hero has seen before, and Elias overhears. She's supposed to bring the hero to his highness, but she thinks it's impossible because the hero prefers older women. Marito asks again, startled. The hero turns to Elias and awkwardly tells her not to say such odd things, and Elias notes that, judging by how he talks to others, the possibilities are she is a gorilla, Ulf is a father, Lacra is a pig, so only Maya remains. The hero gives her a strange look and says he will, of course, speak respectfully to the higher ranks. His preferred type of woman does not include older women. Elias is genuinely amazed. He explains to Elias that Ulf was in trouble, so he decided he had to take care of her. There was no other way for him to see her. Lycra is sweet but foolish, so she does not count. Elias tries to object. After she asks about herself, the hero coldly says she has muscles instead of brains, though he doesn't think she's terrible, so Elias can relax, and Marito watches the whole scene cheerfully. The hero continues, saying she doesn't like being treated like a girl, and that at first he was careful about it, and Elias says that was only at first but not anymore. Finally, the hero says she is a being who solves every problem by brute force, though he admits deep down he still recognizes her as a girl, and Marito can't stand it and laughs loudly while Elias is embarrassed and silent. Marito wipes tears from his eyes and says everything is clear and very interesting, and the hero laughs but admits he knows the king's ulterior motives, saying the king wants them to start a family and stay in Tizen for the rest of his years, while Marito does not hide his intentions. Rising from the bench, he says the hero reads him like an open book. There is no reason for him to stay, but Marito believes the hero is needed here. Confidently, the king declares that if he wants something, he will get it. The hero meets the provocation with a cold stare and replies that he was not going to leave yet. Marito remembers the words for now, but if he does not find a reason to stay, he will eventually leave, and since he does not want to go on those dates alone, he asks his friend the hero to go with him at least once. The hero says he does not agree. No matter how you look at it, they are not at a disadvantage compared to him. Marito thinks about it, so the hero and Marito set a rule that when one side invites a girl, the other should invite someone too. Marito complains he cannot overwhelm the hero with numbers but says he can still find a girl for him, and it will be a duel where everyone must present their best girl. Elias mutters, they are like little children. They somehow agreed on the rules and decided not to add any more. Leaving the castle, Elias tells the hero she cannot believe he could involve his highness in such strange games. The hero tells her not to say that, explaining Marito is a strange man who would not be surprised to order her to marry someone, and Ilya, confused, asks what he means. The hero says he will try to find a decent wife for Marito, so she does not need to worry, and Ilyas asks what kind of girls he likes. Marito sits in the garden watching the sunset, remembers something, and grins as his guardian calls him. He places the glass before the king and asks if the king remembers something funny. Marito adds that when people join a conversation, it often becomes more interesting. The king picks up a glass and finds the hero still very interesting. If he had been a prince rather than a king, they might have met more often and been involved in all kinds of intrigues. Studying his reflection in the glass, the king admits he worries about being unpredictable while also looking forward to his next move. The guardian says he understands his king. Though weaker than many, his actions produce more impressive results than the knight's, and just the thought gives me goosebumps. Marito is surprised because he never expected his servant to take an interest in someone like him, since the servant has never shown interest before, no matter how strong a person is. The guardian says nothing can be done because he sees everyone in this country as weak, and Marito says the hero should have been placed under his protection, since the king would be calm if he were always there. The guardian warns him not to joke like that. If he is not beside the king, he cannot fulfill the contract they made. Marito smiles contentedly and says it's time to get back to business. A few days later, Popev Pero arrives in the capital with his delegation, including Popev Pero Rosario himself, Archbishop Yucacanuk, Meshius Yax, captain of the Holy Knights and the caretaker of Poplares. A horse-drawn cart rolls down a city street. The delegation approaches Tissa Castle. Entering through the gate, they walk along a deserted corridor to the throne room. Guards stand everywhere. The priest in the center identifies himself as a priest of Eucaro and begins by apologizing for the mess he caused, saying Bays suffered great damage from their carelessness. He apologizes, bows, and his delegation bows their heads after him. Marito says it wasn't worth it, though they managed to keep losses to a minimum. The priest says it all happened because of Archbishop Uki and shudders. Marito says that's not the case. What happened revealed that Lahite was the traitor. Pulling a book from his clothes, he says the problem is in the Blue Demon Lord's diary. He returns the book to them as agreed, and with Lord Ragudo he read it and confirmed its contents. Marito then looks at the hero, says the hero alone helped them read it, and points behind him at the hero. He watches the arrivals carefully. Pop F. Paro gives the hero a shrewd look, and the priest tells the others the hero came from another world and asks them to shake the hero's hand. Wanting to know what kind of hero someone really is, he is told by the caretaker that because of the magic in the holy man's body, a touch lets him understand the person standing before him. The hero hesitantly agrees and quickly offers his hand. They shake hands carefully. Pop F. Paro reads the information, finds almost no mana in the hero, then pauses and says he understands. Pop F. Paro says the hero is a coward who fears many things, and to protect himself, he studies everything around him, because on Earth you can easily encounter violent people. The hero is cautious because the priest is no fool and grasps things quickly and thoroughly, and the hero himself admits it. The priest bows to the hero and says that, despite everything, he found a traitor in his country thanks to him and is grateful. And Papa Danans replies it is not worth it because gratitude belongs to those who are no longer with them. After calling him a coward without thinking, the priest apologizes, and the hero calmly says he is not offended by the truth. The hero then turns to Archbishop Yuke, bows in gratitude, and credits him with a major contribution to Lahikin's case. The Archbishop awkwardly tells him not to thank him. Archbishop Aka admits he was careless and has corrected his mistakes. Behind him, the caretaker giggles softly and says Mr. Aka was very worried during their journey. The Archbishop tells Laris to speak less, and she pretends to cover her mouth with her palm while asking for forgiveness. Her sweet smile makes the hero suspicious of her behavior, so he pays closer attention to her. He approaches and asks if they have met before. She answers no, she came to Thighs for the first time and has just met him. Gloomily, the hero decides to check it out. F. Paro, leafing through the book, says the hero said earlier that some parts can only be told in person. The hero agrees, but before that wants to make the same check. The priest agrees and asks if the hero has the same ability. The hero replies that he has something similar and invites everyone to join since they have gathered. Marito smiles contentedly, anticipating something interesting. The hero says this is a way to test their confidence. First pop the Uparo, then he asks the other to repeat, starting with I am Popev Paro. Calmly, the man repeats the words the hero dictated and asks whether that is correct, and the hero says it is fine, and that the same must be repeated to Archbishop Yuka, while Tom feels embarrassed by the hero's attention. At first he stutters but echoes the hero's words, then Papa Danit says he must repeat that he is Archbishop Yuka, which he says more calmly before asking, sounding perplexed, why all this is and what the point is. The hero explains that Archbishop Uki reacted differently than the first time someone lied or told the truth, and that Uki is much more confident when he tells the truth. The Archbishop replies that he understood. The hero turns to the Knight's captain and says it's Yax's turn, then repeats the first line, calmly calling the wrong name, and does the same with the second. Next he asks everyone to repeat the third phrase, he is the captain of the Order of Holy Knights, and repeats it confidently, while the hero praises the knight as worth waiting for and barely hesitates now that it's the lyricist's turn. The hero repeats the first two phrases. A woman calmly echoes him, then his voice darkens as he says the third sentence. Laris, looking into his eyes, calmly repeats that phrase as well. After a pause, the hero gloomily utters the fourth, saying she is a Lahite. Everyone in the room goes on alert, ready to attack if anything happens. Lyris remains silent. Everyone moves into fighting positions. The air grows tense as a dark aura gathers around Larissa, and a familiar, unsettling smile spreads across her face. The hero asks what happened and whether she can repeat it, and he replies she cannot because Pop F. Paro can tell when someone is lying, and Archbishop Yuka can tell when someone is telling the truth. No point hiding anymore. His lips spread into an even bolder grin as stunned people watch. He asks when the hero managed to notice. He said he wasn't entirely sure, but but he couldn't imagine choosing to end his life. Someone like him wouldn't give up everything so easily. The hero explains that Lehit learned the book's contents, though not every detail, and will not risk his life for anything until he knows them all. The hero says that since that day he has been very careful with anyone he meets for the first time, but Lehit, disguised as a girl, does not believe he could be recognized for such a weak reason because he readily blamed him, even calling him Lyris, and Lehit wants to know why the hero is so confident. Studying the hero closely, he wonders whether the Lehit will attack. Staying silent would be wiser, but he might still blurt out something unnecessary. The hero answers that he is good at reading relationships between people, and while King Marito spoke with Pope Euparo, he watched how far everyone stood from each other. The hero replies that she alone felt uncomfortable among them, and when Lehit asks again, she explains that he smiled while teasing Archbishop Uku, which is how it happened. Pop Euparo kept a distance that was neither welcoming nor cold. The hero watched him closely. A subordinate should show proper conduct, but he did not. The hero says someone else would just assume he liked a girl that cute, but for someone as unlucky as him, that is impossible. Lehit understood the hero's words, but he had been so careless about seeing the hero in person that he made a mistake. The hero decided to finish his speech, and at the start asked if they had met before, and Lehit replied that he was seeing the hero for the first time. Only someone trying hard to fool the person he was talking to would answer like that, so he decided to test him. Knowing these techniques better than anyone, he remembered using them with Maya and Lacra, and even felt déjà vu. Pleased by the hero's display of thought, Lehit replied cheerfully as an earthman would. Archbishop Oki angrily scolded him and demanded to know what he had done to Lyris. Lehit said the body clearly belonged to Lyris. Lehit says that on the day he cut his neck with a knife, he used magic to separate his soul from his body, allowing his soul to leave the physical shell. The ritual needs careful preparation and is difficult to repeat. Lehit warns them because he already has the next body ready, so there is no point in harming the current vessel. The hero says this magic helps him a lot. It means he does not have to worry about dying, but you need a strong spirit to simply abandon the body. Father Euparo says the soul-moving magic is forbidden, yet he crossed the line. Lehit smiles with the tips of his lips. He says he would like to talk to them a bit longer, but it would change nothing. Then Lehit falls silent. Turning to the hero, he says he was very glad to meet him in person. They squint at the hitman. Lehit bows and says he will leave them, adding they will meet again. Blood gushes from the Lyris's mouth, and her body collapses onto the carpet as Archbishop Yuka rushes to her, calling her name. He opens her mouth and says it looks like he has hidden sharp magic crystals in his mouth. They need to give her first aid right away. People are starting to fuss around.